and welcome to the regular March meeting of the Concord Zoning Board of Adjustment. For the most part, we will follow our usual procedure this evening, which is to say we will call the cases in the order in which they appear on the agenda. We will ask the appellants to step forward, be seated in the chairs to my right, sworn in, and we will ask them to provide any testimony that they would like us to hear relative to their case. We do request that they confine themselves, if at all possible, to a 10-minute interval. Following that, we will ask the appellants to step down, and we will solicit testimony from anyone in the room who wishes to be heard in favor of the appeal and anyone who wishes to be heard in opposition to the appeal. We ask that those people confine themselves to a 5-minute presentation. After all of those presentations have been heard, we will check in with code enforcement to see if there's anything from their office that we haven't heard before. And after all of that, if anything has been offered that appears to justify factual clarification, the appellant will have the opportunity to offer that clarification prior to our closing the public testimony portion of the hearing. Under most circumstances, the board will act on each case before moving on to the next. We have a couple of things that are a little bit out of the usual procedure this evening. We have a couple of tabled cases that we'll be taking up, and we won't be hearing testimony on all of that. And we have a rehearing request, which we do not usually take public testimony on. Also, if you are here for case 0153-2024, that's 10 Whitney Road, IN Industrial District, Morrill Mill Pond LLC owners, they have asked us to postpone that case to the next meeting of the board. Do I hear a motion to adjourn that case?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
To our next regular meeting, which is April, whatever it is?
April 3rd.
April 3rd? That's consistent with the motion?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The vote is unanimous. If you're here for that case, you needn't stay. We won't be hearing that case tonight. There's another case that I want to bring your attention to, and that is at the very end of the agenda tonight. Is there anyone here representing the appellant for Gateway Performance District, Onyx Steeplegate, Concord? That's 0133-2023. Yes, sir. Would it be acceptable to you for us to recess this case? Or would you rather be heard tonight?
My client is on their way here. If I can touch base.
All right, we don't have to decide now. We can wait, proceed with the agenda, and it'll be your call.
Thank you.
There's a reason why I'm asking, which has to do with the fact that there's another attorney for someone who's interested in the case who's betwixt and between, and if we don't have to hear it, then we could just do her a favor. But if you want to be here tonight, you certainly will be.
That is helpful information, Mr. Chairman. I will take that under consideration.
Okay, thank you. All right, that brings us to what was actually a recessed rehearing request, which is case 0123-2023. The board had heard this case and denied the variances. There was a request for a rehearing, which we considered at the last meeting, which was the February meeting, and the board recessed it in order to get legal consultation from the city solicitor's office, because there were a couple of things raised by the appellant that we weren't clear on the implications of, the legal implications of. We've gotten that, so we're now prepared to move forward on that consideration. Do I hear a motion to take the to reopen the case?
So moved.
Is there? Okay. Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, this had to do with 54 North Main Street, Central Business Performance District, Siborowski Associates LLC owners. The reason we held things up the last time was there was an assertion in the memo that requested the rehearing that we could consider certain elements of economic hardship that we did not consider, or that at least I did not consider, I can't speak for others, in the original hearing, which would conceivably, in the minds of at least one or two board members, and maybe all of them, constitute a potential legal error that we could correct by rehearing the case. There was also the question of whether or not the rehearing hearing needed 5 members. We have been advised that that's not true.
Excuse me.
So, Brenda, what do you think? Or maybe I'll tell you what. I'll start with Andrew.
Okay.
Because you just gave me that please start with Andrew look.
Well, I did review, and it was before the last meeting, so I'm looking at it again, but I did review carefully the submission from the applicant, and I understand there's several arguments for why we should reconsider. I think, a fair amount of it is sort of restating what was already stated, but probably the most, the strongest argument they present has to do with the claim that we had expressed an understanding that it would be inappropriate to consider a financial hardship. They cite case law stating that it is appropriate for us to consider that. I don't honestly recall which one of us said that, but for me that wasn't a decisive factor. It may be for others, but for me that wasn't a decisive factor. So I'm disinclined to rehear it.
Laura.
I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I think that we made the correct decision, and I haven't seen anything that convinces me that what we decided was incorrect. So I'm inclined to not rehear it.
Nick.
I wasn't persuaded that there was any new information, and nor do I think we made an error, so I'm inclined to not rehear it also.
Brenda.
I do not sit on the original vote on this, so I'm inclined to kind of follow along with the recommendations of the group. I did review what came through to us, and knowing that was a possible factor was questionable, but I don't think we've really taken that into consideration often or before. So I don't know that would have changed the decision.
Okay. I, as you will recall, was on the losing side of that vote of the original appeal, and I would be in favor of rehearing the case because I think we did not give due consideration to the developer's assertions that the project wasn't feasible without the variance. Obviously, at the time, I had other reasons for thinking that the variance was justified. I acknowledge then that it was a close call, but I still believe that to be the case, and I would be in favor of rehearing the case on the basis of the idea that we might not have correctly applied the law. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I move to deny the request for a rehearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to deny, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. The vote is 4-1 with the chair in the minority. The request for rehearing is denied. That brings us to our second rehearing request.
Chair, on this one, I'm going to recuse myself. I did vote in the original, but I learned information since, so I'm going to recuse myself on this one.
This is the barbershop?
Yes.
Okay. This is case 0134, 2023, 50 South State Street, CU Urban Commercial District. 50 South State LLC are the owners. The applicant sought a variance from the Article 2869 Table of Maximum Sign Dimensions. We have a letter from Evan F. Knappen, who is an attorney who represents the appellant, who requests that we, he wanted a rehearing on one of the elements.
It's
When we denied.
painted signs.
Yes. No, it was the size.
Yep.
Size of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. He contends that we made a legal error in judging that the size was grounds for rejecting the appeal. And I'd be interested to know what you thought about that, Nick.
Well, I do have a question about that. I didn't have a chance to really go through the ordinances, but is there Is there an ordinance that addresses the size of painted signs?
No,
per se?
because painted signs are prohibited altogether. So there's no ordinance addressing the size because they're not allowed at all.
But didn't we approve painted signs? We
You
just didn't approve the
painted
signs.
size through a variance,
So-
and then the size is the size of any sign.
So since we approved that, then the fact that it's a painted sign and it's not prohibited, then wouldn't that be grounds for a rehearing?
In my mind.
No, okay.
But do you think it is?
Yeah, I'd like to lean in that direction.
Okay. Jim?
Dr. Hutton, walk me through that again.
So signs painted on buildings are strictly prohibited by the ordinance altogether. So we apply, because you granted a variance to allow the sign to be painted on, we then apply the sign limitations of the sign, because signs in general have a limitation on the size. So you've allowed one thing, so it kind of kicks it into another category to get the size.
So what would be the impact of the relief that they're asking?
So the relief he's asking is not only to have it painted, but to have it exceed the size limitations of the district.
Which we were kind of uncomfortable, which
You were uncomfortable with the
we're not,
size, but,
not more than uncomfortable, we did not want to allow it.
correct. So you
What was
denied
that
the
saying?
size, but granted the painting.
Okay.
Because it was already painted.
It has already been painted.
Yeah, it's a done deal. But it's, based on our ruling, it would have to be undone. Ms. Victor-Mori?
Oh, I don't see a basis for rehearing. I think it clearly applies.
Brendan?
I feel bad because it was already done, but it was done prior to approval, so I don't know that I
You don't see a
it.
basis for a rehearing either?
I feel bad, but I don't see it.
I don't either. I don't see that allowing a painted sign means that the sign can be any size they want it to be, which is the implication here. This was a very logical and reasonable application of the ordinance as I understood it, so I don't consider that we made a legal error either. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I move that we deny the request for rehearing.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the vote was 4-1 with Mr. Wallner in the minority. And that brings us to there is no, that's it.
That's it.
So the first of the regular public hearings is 0144, 2024, 134 Borough Road, RM Medium Density Residential District. Adam and Alicia Chelmo are the owners. The applicant seeks a variance pursuant to Article 2824H, multiple principal uses on a single lot, to allow for a second single-family dwelling on a lot.
Chair, if I may, I think
Oh,
you
yes.
want to dispense with
I
Steeplegate.
was able to connect with my client from Onyx Partners, and it's, be open to continuing to the next meeting.
All right, very good. I tell you what, since we've already called this case, we'll finish it off, and then what we will do is continue it to the next meeting.
That's great, thank you.
So anyone who is here for the, was it
The mall cases.
270 Loudon Road, those are the two mall cases, one having to do with parking and the other having to do with a whole host of other questions. We will not be hearing that this evening. We'll be hearing that in April. So you needn't stay if that's the only reason you've come out this evening. All right, we're back to 134 Borough Road. Is anyone representing the appellant or the appellant here? Please come forward.
Excuse me.
Have a seat over here. Yep, up here at the grown-ups table. If you would, jot your names down on the sign-in sheet. I swear you both in? Swear to tell the truth and nothing but?
Yes, sir.
Would you identify yourselves for the record as you testify?
Sure. I'm Alicia Chelman.
Adam Chomo.
What would you like us to know?
So we put in an application to place a second dwelling unit on our property. The unit is for elderly family members that will be going into a housing crisis as they're being taxed out of their home. They live in a condo association. These special assessments are going to be raised by a lot, which is causing concern for them. So we came up with adding a second dwelling unit to our property so that they can maintain some independence. We can be able to check in on them. We feel that this home will actually add value to the neighborhood. Where we are placing it, I did bring pictures, but it's all just down trees, and there's really nothing there, so it would definitely add value to the neighborhood.
Do you have photographs with you?
I do, yes, I apologize. I probably should have included those, but I have a
Well,
couple.
pass them around,
packets.
we'll take a look at them.
Sure,
And we'll retain them for the record if that's all
sure,
right with you.
yeah.
And I'm sorry, is this Washington Street in Pennacook or in Concord?
It's Borough Road in Pennacook, so
but
it's
it's off of
corner of
Washington.
Borough and then
Where
Washington,
we live,
yeah,
Washington's here, Penn Road.
yeah.
In November, we had a survey done by Bartlett and Associates to kind of cover our property lines and the water lines, utility lines, and to make sure that we had the appropriate amount of square footage to combine, but also that it wasn't inhibiting the neighbors within the square footage as well. And it was determined that the property, the secondary dwelling unit would be a manufactured home of a particular size, falls in line with the compliance of the expectations with the square footage that we have.
I think that's all we had to say.
Expectations of square footage? Outside?
No, there isn't an expectation for a secondary.
Well, the ADU has which, if
This
you're
is-
referring to,
This is not
not an ADU.
Not an
This is
ADU, no.
A separate manufactured home on the property, 24 by 40, I believe it's 24 by 40.
23 by 42, yeah.
900, around 900 square feet, 9 to 950 square feet. And I measured, like, with measurements, where that would be, and there's a appropriate property that also accounts for the driveway parking space as well within the packets that we provided for the 5 packets we provided. We're on a lot where we're picking a designated location of our property that is not being utilized, and it doesn't interfere with anybody else's property lines, their property.
Can you point to anything that's peculiar to the lot that creates a hardship?
No,
We're on the kind of like the equivalent of like the pictures.
Dr.
We're kind
Hutton,
of
do you
on,
mind
like,
bringing up the aerial? Can you do that? Sure.
there is,
Before you give a final answer to that question, keep in mind that is one of the requirements, so.
yes, yeah, no,
Are you able to utilize the survey that we sent you?
they had it up, yeah.
Pardon me while I remodel the room.
It's a bigger lot, so it's hard to, there you go.
Thank you.
So one of the criteria for a variance is that there be something about the lot, and sometimes we consider to be the configuration of a building on it to be part of the thing about the lot, that is peculiar to it, that creates a problem if you have to comply with the ordinance. You know, that's the hardship, the problem it creates. Is there anything like that that you can point to here?
No, it's all just dead and down trees. Like I said, it doesn't interfere with any of our, where we plan to put it with our neighbors. The way it would be configured, it would look just like another house going along Washington Street. It would just look like another home next door neighbor that's kind of in the back there. So really, it would just look like another home that has been built there. So just a small, it's very small, like you said, manufactured or modular home. So there isn't anything that would, that we believe would interfere with anything else or any of our neighbors or any hardships, yeah.
Is there, sorry, Chris, do you mind? Is there
Go ahead.
septic or well or?
We're on a city sewer.
Okay.
So when we had our survey done, they outlined exactly where our city water lines, our sewer lines, and then, yeah, and then our neighbor's water line actually apparently runs through the front of our yard as well. But we are not building, that's why we propose not building near there, but near enough the water line that comes right through from Washington so they can connect into that water line.
So I'm not asking to be provocative, but I'm just, did you consider an ADU or an addition on the house to deal with the?
So we did consider an addition or an ADU. It seemed a little bit stricter requirements, plus
750 square foot for the ADU isn't sufficient for kind of like,
we were thinking things of
family
wheelchair accessibility, for potential wheelchair accessibility. And we felt our in-laws, his parents, just wanted to have some kind of separateness from us. They didn't want to be right on top of
I
us.
understand if there's anything
Sure.
unique about the property or the house that would prevent you from doing an addition to serve the.
No, I don't believe there's anything unique. Just it was just the fact that they wanted to have their own, be separate from us and not attached to us, and right on top of us. So to maintain their own independence of some kind.
the understanding was that there was no, you could not file a variance for the 750 square footage, which was what I understood, so.
Sure you can.
Yeah, you can.
Well,
You can.
750 would be,
That's-
an ADU would be a special exception rather than a variance. That's a technicality, but they are a different kind of request.
Yes.
But we have approved ADUs which are bigger, and we have approved ADUs that are detached.
We've approved them as second dwelling units, which is what this application is.
Okay.
Dr. Hutton, I think, if I recall, have we approved those in the past, but put the condition that there must be one owner occupant in at least one of the properties?
You've approved the secondary dwelling units as being like an ADU, so you've added the conditions that are similar to a special exception.
And we've done that in situations where there was something about the property that prohibited the building of the ADU that was attached.
Correct.
Yeah. In at least one case, the building was the size of an ADU.
Right.
Another question for Dr. Hutton. In looking at the code, I noticed that manufactured housing is mentioned. It's not, manufactured housing parks are mentioned, and they're not allowed by right in this zone. How does manufactured housing by itself fit in if it's not a
I think
park?
this is modular,
It's a
not
modular, he's
manufactured.
saying
Oh, it's a
manufactured,
modular?
but it's a modular home.
So
Yeah,
it's
sorry.
not going to be on wheels, it's going to be
No.
on a permanent foundation?
Correct.
Not on a foundation, on a concrete.
Slab. Yeah.
Okay, but it's a modular building.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah. He's saying
Then,
modular.
Then my question is answered.
Dr. Tracy, I have a question. In that location, it's almost an acre of land. It's about 4,000 square feet shy, maybe, roughly, because it's not an even square, but is there any reason that the piece couldn't be subdivided? or-
Because of the location of the home, I think they'd have a hard time subdividing it and meeting the setbacks. They
Okay.
did work diligently with the engineering department to make sure the home was not on their water line, which was a concern, because
Yeah.
their original location was literally sitting on their water line.
Right.
And again, because they're adding an additional curb cut off of a different street, they had to work to move everything around so that they could get that additional curb cut in as well.
So can that and the two water lines that are running through a majority of the,
Right, because the
property be
two water
considered
lines are
part of
towards
the
the front,
hardship?
they had to push it toward, as,
yeah,
to the rear of both of those water lines. Yep,
does that create part of the hardship that,
I can't answer that.
okay.
So if sorry, we're talking around you, but I think we're trying to get yes. So what's unique about the property is the location of the house makes it unsuitable for subdivision?
The location of the house and the water lines
Makes it unsuitable
for a subdivision.
Subdivision
Without,
solution?
without relief, you're right. A
Yeah.
subdivision would need relief as well.
Okay.
But their current plan doesn't need any other relief. It
Correct.
meets the setback and the density.
Meets the setbacks,
and
meets the
frontage.
driveway standards, all of those things they've been able to take care of.
Is your lot the biggest one around there by far?
I don't
neighbor
know,
across
it's
the
not, our
street on
neighbor
Borough Road.
across from us has a very large,
Yeah, okay.
It's all varied in that area.
Okay. Yeah, I see. There's the other one,
yeah.
Catacorn there is quite large.
Are there other properties in the area that have 2 units on them?
I'm trying to think. I've seen houses that look like, it's hard to tell because there's some houses with, it looks like a huge house in the back, it's a garage, but it definitely looks like there's living quarters above it because it's so large. And there's quite 2 homes, at least 2 homes on Washington Street that are, that look like modular homes as well. So it wouldn't be as stretch as far as placing another modular home there, just because there's at least 2 others on Washington Street.
Of a similar design.
Of a similar design, yeah.
Kind of equivalent of range.
The one on Borough Road that I have highlighted here is a condo, so that's at least 2.
Okay.
With this layout, most people won't even assume they're on the same lot.
Other questions from the board? Anything else you'd like us to know?
I don't think so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in favor of this appeal? Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in opposition to it? Any comments from code enforcement?
No, I think I got everything into the conversation I needed.
Very good. And with that, we'll close the public testimony portion of the hearing. We have a request before us to place a manufactured home on a lot, which would result in 2 houses on 1 lot.
Chris, just to clarify, modular, not manufactured, just for the record.
Modular, not
Mod-
manufactured.
Yeah, manufactured is completely different.
You see, when I went to architecture school, we didn't know the difference.
I better know.
It was way before my time. Okay.
Stagecoaches and.
Yeah, yeah. People were living in huts then. So anyhow, I apologize. It's a modular home, which is to say it's same as a stick-built home, it's just somewhere else and
Stick-built.
brought here.
Exactly.
So we have a request to place a modular home on a permanent foundation. We heard testimony that the configuration of the lot makes it, although the lot's large enough to subdivide, they could not subdivide it without relief of side yard setbacks. Start with Nick. Mr. Wallner, how do you think about
Well,
this?
the fact that the solution would have been to subdivide the property, and we found out that you can't do that, and I think therein lies the hardship. But you can't subdivide it. That would have been the easy solution. I think that certainly by allowing this, it's certainly not going to devalue the surrounding properties. I think it won't alter the essential character of the neighborhood, and I think the spirit of the ordinance would be observed.
Mr. Monty?
I agree with Nick, but I'd be open to if somebody were to suggest that one of the dwellings would have to be owner occupied.
I don't see the hardship. They couldn't identify any hardship, and I don't see any reason why it can't be an attached ADU. And maybe they would need a variance for bigger size, but it would be more in keeping with the ordinance.
Mr. Winters?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to agree with Laura. No. I didn't mean it as it came out. I said the unfortunate part was not the agree with Laura, but was because
dig a little deeper.
Yeah, they're highly sympathetic, and I mean I'd love to get to yes because they have great reasons for wanting to do this, but I feel like there's no the subdivision reason could apply to pretty much any lot in this area. If they had explored a little, a little more in depth the ability to attach an ADU, and they had it couldn't be done. I think that could be a good reason, but I didn't really hear that, so unfortunately I'm am not inclined to approve it as it's been stated. If they did more research and came back and said, no, we can't do it any other way, I'd be inclined to table it and let them come back, but as of right now, I can't really see it.
I'm inclined to agree with Ms. Spector Morgan and Mr. Winters on this one. We heard pretty much straight-out testimony that there isn't a hardship here, and the size of the unit is simply a matter of what they'd like to have as opposed to something that's forced upon them by circumstance. So much as I don't see how this would do much harm out there, I don't think we have the power to grant a variance in this case based on the evidence that we heard. Would anyone?
Can we give them the option of what Andrew suggested?
They could always come back with a different proposal,
Okay.
and we could hear that.
But it would have to be different.
Yeah.
If we take it off the table, as Andrew suggested, then they could come back with the same proposal, saying we've checked all other.
Yeah, but I don't think it's
Okay.
our place to do that.
Okay.
It would make their arguments for them and say, yeah, come on back. We'll see what we can do for you.
Just asking.
Mark?
I'm still new to the ordinance. Isn't a breezeway alone considered attached for an
No,
ADU?
the ordinance is specific that it has to be living space attached by a common wall and a door.
Yeah.
Some of us don't think that's correct, but that is the way it's written. All right. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve,
Is there, okay, sorry.
recognizing that there's a uniqueness to where the water line is and the location of the house makes it not practical or able to subdivide. But I would condition that one of the dwellings would need to be owner occupied.
And I assume that you believe all the other criteria are met.
I do.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. It's 2-3. The motion fails. Is there a second motion?
I will move to deny the requested variance on the basis that there are no special circumstances of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area that would justify the variance.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
No.
Nay.
The vote is 3-2. In this case, the motion carries and the variance is denied. Which brings us, well, before we do that, let's go forward to case 0133, 2023, and 0142, 2024. These are both related to 270 Loudon Road. Do I hear a motion to postpone these cases, recess these cases till our next regular meeting in April?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Although I have a question for Dr. Hutton, but
Yeah.
I'll second.
Shoot, okay. It's been moved to second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The vote is unanimous. The cases are recessed until next month.
What's the agenda look like for next month?
With this one, there's 12, I believe. Oh, wait, you tabled them. Yep, 12. So I had to think about,
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's have to be
some of them are,
two meetings
some
next
of them
month.
are, I don't think it's,
How many
it's
lawyers?
I'd like the audience to understand that the man who just said that is a lawyer.
I was just gonna say, says the lawyer. Some of them are, you have a couple of signs and so forth on next, and
Okay.
those don't usually take as much discussion. So some of them are relatively shorter applications.
Yeah,
I think.
well, it is what it is. I just,
Yep,
we put
nope,
this one,
just-
I don't want it necessarily doing this
I
one at
know.
10 o'clock at
Yeah.
night.
Yep,
Well-
no, I understand.
If it comes to that, we'll do what we have to do so that doesn't happen. We're kind of getting like people with a credit card, aren't we? We just keep putting things off till next month. Okay, the next case then is case 0146, 2024, 4143 Concord Street, RD, Downtown Residential District. Eleanor F. Yetton, revocable trust owner. The applicant seeks variances to allow for the division of the parcel into individual lots for the two primary structures on the lot. Such a division does not meet the dimensional standards of the ordinance, and variances would be required as follows. 2841B, minimum lot size. 2841C, minimum lot frontage. 2841D, minimum yard requirements being no less than 3 feet. 2841E, maximum lot coverage. And 2872E, table off-street parking requirements. Is there anyone here from the Yetton Revocable Trust? Please come forward. Swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
What was that?
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you jot your name on the sign-in sheet and also identify yourself for the record as you testify?
I'm Eleanor Yetton.
What would you like us to know, Ms. Yetton?
I'd like you to know that I'd like to retire.
Fair enough.
I've owned the properties on the grandfather lot since, I think, 2003. And I've always had 41 rented. And I've had 1.6 cars in that driveway. And it hasn't been a hardship for anybody. Basically, the appearance from the street or the road, nothing is going to change. I just want to be able to split the property and sell 41, which is the duplex, so that I don't have to keep redoing it. So that's pretty much where I'm at. I'd like to just live in my house, which is 43 with the shared driveway, and not have to have the responsibility for the 41, which is a duplex.
Would it be fair to say that the fact that the houses are already there on a single lot creates a hardship for you?
Does what?
Creates a hardship?
No.
Yes.
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 Yeah, I guess
The
it
answer
does.
you want to
It
give is
does,
yes.
because I can't sell that one separately, sorry.
That's what we tried to do last time.
Very good. Are there other questions from the board?
Are you making any physical changes to the property?
No.
Okay.
I did engage someone to do the surveying.
Sure. But you're not making any changes to the buildings or the parking? or-
No,
no.
nothing's changing.
Okay.
I mean, I'm in the process right now of completely rehabbing the downstairs of 41, so it'll be, it's all be code appliant, and I'm just doing everything new. And I just don't want to do it again.
Okay, thank you.
I do have one question for you.
Sure.
If I read this plan correctly, you're proposing to run the property line right down the middle of the driveway?
Mhm.
And then more or less equidistant between the two buildings? And then off to a corner. What inspired that configuration?
It's kind of up in the air. I mean, as far as the part of going from one corner to the other in the back. I don't care one way or the other how that backyard gets used, because I don't use it. And if the person that buys that house, if I'm able to do that, if they want the whole backyard, that's fine with me. I just want to be able to have enough space, maybe 3 feet out from my garage, so that I could get a ladder in there if I needed to get to the roof.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
When you bought it in 2003, did you buy both properties at the same time, or did you acquire 143 at some point after the fact?
I'm sorry, my hearing aid battery died.
Oh.
Now, what was your question?
When you bought the property, did you buy both buildings, or did you buy
Yes,
one
it
at
was
a time?
grandfather on a single lot.
Other questions?
The line that this line down the middle, is that
That's the center between the two
Yeah.
houses.
is that the final division, or is that just, because there's a reference here that notes that the survey hasn't been done yet. Is that line down the middle the final decision about how it's going to be divided, or is that just sort of provisional?
I think that's the final decision, because right now, we're having cars on either side, and I just picked the middle. I think it was,
Is the driveway wide enough that each house can use half of it, or
Yes.
will they need to share?
yes.
Okay.
No, each one can use half. It's, I think, 23 feet between the buildings.
Very good. Other questions? Is there anything else you'd like us to know?
I don't think so.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in favor of this appeal? Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in opposition to it? Any comments from code enforcement?
Just a couple. In reference to where the line is, this is a little unorthodox because what I tried to get in your agenda was that pinch point in between the two buildings where it's going to be no less than a certain dimension. Staff is sort of, some staff obviously likes the survey first. Some staff is of the opinion that not to encumber the owner with needing a survey until they get to the subdivision. So it was kind of hard to write the agenda item without all the dimensions, but I think what you're seeing is representative enough of what she wants to do that you could make a decision with just that pinch point dimension and not all of the finals on the line from the pinch point to the road or from the pinch point to the back.
Understood.
Did you want to read the
Because
letter?
despite what she said, it could change a little bit for
That could
various
change
reasons, right?
a little bit once the survey's there, but that pinch point where it's only 6'8" in between the two buildings, it's going to have to be in the middle of those 2 points.
We do have a letter. This letter is from Seth Hipple, who lives at 45 Concord Street, and he indicates that he's next door to the properties that Ms. Yetton would like to subdivide. He's seen the plan and wishes and sees no problem with the proposed subdivision. All right, with that, we'll declare the public testimony portion of the hearing closed, and I'll invite the board to discuss the case. Let's see, who are we, the five of us here? Yeah, all of us are in. Andrew, what do you think?
Well, I think that the fact that the two buildings are long pre-existing, so that creates a unique element to the property, and I think so. The real question is it a reasonable use, and does it create a hardship for them to be unable to convey them separately? And I think it does. I think it's reasonable to be able to convey the properties separately. So it is, as Dr. Hutton said, a little unorthodox, were her words, that we don't have the survey, so we don't know the exact dimensions, but if the city's comfortable working with our decision after the fact, then I'm okay with granting the variance.
We often do work from GIS map site plans and assume they're in good faith. Ms. Spector-Morgan, what do you think?
This is drawing a line on a plan. I don't have any problem with it. I think there is a hardship given the configuration of the lot. It's not going to alter the essential character of the neighborhood. It's not going to diminish surrounding property values, and there is no justice in denying the variances.
Mr. Monahan?
I have nothing to add.
Mr. Wallner? Ditto. I agree with my colleagues. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I move that we approve all 5 variances.
Is there a second?
Second.
Do you have enough information?
I do, thank you.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The vote is unanimous. The variances are granted.
Well, thank you very much.
You are welcome.
Have a happy retirement.
On whichever side you choose to live.
It would definitely straighten out that yard line.
The next case is case 0147, 41 Auburn Street, RS Single Family Residential District. Christina Kirkpatrick and James David are the owners. The applicant seeks a variance pursuant to Article 2841D, minimum yard requirements, to allow for a 20-foot by 20-foot carport to be 10 feet from the property line where 15 feet are required. Good evening, Ms. Smith-Meyer.
How are you?
Swear to tell the truth and nothing but.
I do.
Would you jot your name on the sign-in sheet, please, and identify yourself for the record as you testify?
So clearly I'm here representing the Kirkpatricks.
Yes. What would you like us to know?
Well, they live in a house that was built in 1900, and the house right now is 10 feet away from the property line where a 15-foot setback is required. And from the plan that I submitted, there's the next door neighbor has a garage that's right on the property line, but everything else seems to be in order. It is a corner lot, and when I met the Kirkpatricks, their interest was in doing a lot of landscaping, but then they also threw in the idea of doing a garage. Currently, the garage is underneath it's the basement garage, and they use it as a shed, and the cars that we have now just don't fit in it. And they're anxious to keep the cars out of the winter weather. So we decided, well, I suggested that maybe the kind of carport that they would have designed and installed during the summer months could actually be used as kind of like an outdoor space, so that you could actually move the cars back into the driveway and use it as a functional space. And it wouldn't be as massive, and so I picked the 20 by 20 because that would be about the minimum for 2 cars parked in it, and if you open the door, it wouldn't hit a wall. And so that's how that all came up, and it doesn't get any closer to the property line. And it's almost in line with the existing driveway, and they'd be able to turn around where the asphalt goes into the house. They'll be able to back up as a turnaround and then head out without backing up. And that's about it.
Questions from the board?
If you were to move it 5 feet out of the setback, would that result in having to back out onto the road?
No, but it wouldn't be quite enough space to have the agility.
Okay.
And it just, right now, there's a garage.
Right.
So it would be kind of a waste of space, I think.
I didn't quite understand the relevance of the reference to the neighbor's garage.
Oh, well, because it's right behind where the, it's right
It
over there.
shows
Yeah,
up on our
it's right
attachment.
here.
Oh.
It's right on the property line. And there was a fence
Oh, I see.
that was not on this owner's property line. So that they already had lost a piece, but I think that, I don't think it's a big deal with 5 feet. That allows them to then have a nice turnaround. And there'll be like some, there's some grading and all sorts of other things, but the structure itself is almost as if it was like a gazebo kind of a thing. But it didn't make any sense to have it designed until we got the variance.
Understood. Other questions from the board? Anything? Nope, no, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here who would like to be heard in favor of this appeal? Is there anyone here who would like to be heard in opposition to it? Any comments from code enforcement?
No, just reminding that it is a corner lot, so if you try to bring it forward, you have to be conscious of that road setback on both sides.
Thank you.
Very good. That's a good point. With that, we'll declare the public testimony portion of the hearing closed. We have a request to place a carport on an existing smallish lot on Auburn Street in Concord, and we heard testimony that in order for the design to work properly, it needs to be within 10 feet or 10 feet from the property line rather than 15. What do you think, Andrew?
I think it was explained why this spot is a logical spot on the lot to allow the carport and for access. And I think having a carport is a reasonable use of a property. So I'd be inclined to approve.
Ms. Spector-Morgan.
I can get to yes, because it is a narrow lot, and because I'm concerned that if they bring the carport forward, we would have issues with them backing out on the road. I don't think it's going to alter the essential character of the neighborhood. These 3 lots in particular are pretty narrow and developed close to the property lines. It's not going to diminish surrounding property values, and I don't see any justice in denying it.
I agree with everything that Laura said.
Mr. Wallner?
I agree, and also, we really aren't doing any further encroachment into the back setback. We already have a 10-foot encroachment with the porch. This is similar. And I think if you brought it forward, I'm persuaded that it would affect the ability to maneuver vehicles. You've got a very small garage that probably can't accommodate most full-size vehicles. So I think they're entitled to have some sort of a garage or a carport. So I'm inclined to support it also.
I agree with my colleagues. Would anyone care to make a motion
I move that we approve the requested variance
for all the reasons you gave?
for all the reasons I've already said.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The vote is unanimous. The variance is granted. That brings us to case 0148, 30 River Road, RO Open Space Residential District, Shoreland Protection Overlay, and Flood Hazard District. 30 River Road Properties LLC are the owners. They seek a variance pursuant to Article 2884A1, nonconforming uses of land, to allow vertical expansion of a nonconforming single-family dwelling. Swear to tell the truth and nothing but.
Yes, sir.
Would you identify yourself for the record, please?
Yes, my name is John Cronin. I'm an attorney from Manchester. I'm representing the applicant, Peter Grenier. The principals is here this evening if there's any questions and to support my offers of proof. This case is familiar to many of you. I think this is what they would call the hat trick, the third time here, for various issues that have developed on a prior non-conforming structure. This building has been in existence a long time, certainly before the floodplain ordinance was adopted. It was acquired time back, and a builder made an attempt to renovate it and did secure a permit. The building department, the building inspector at the time, who I understand is no longer an employee of the town, was generally aware of what was going on at that particular site. He failed. Mr. Grenier and another guy came in to try and pick it up and finish it, told because they're a different entity, they need a separate building permit, which they applied for, and then the funds started. For whatever reason, apparently at the initial application, some of the issues relative to the floodplain ordinance were, whether overlooked or not, weighed in heavily. And it certainly triggered a closer review and said, hey, we've got some issues here relative to what's been done and its relationship to the floodplain ordinance. Came in and requested a variance, which was done. During that case, an abutter was present, testified to some other issues correctly and raised them. There's some modifications done and came back a second time. The issue before you this evening relates to two small sections of the second floor of the building at the back. They're essentially two dormers. If you look at that right photograph, you can see that the roof of that bump out was changed a little bit to give it a different architectural flair. It's a steeper pitch. The A-frame above it is generally similar to the old picture. But if you look to the left, you see a box-type dormer with a window in it. That is a walk-in closet. And behind that, you'll see a bump out with a dormer. It's facing in the other direction that comes out over that family room in the first level. That space was created to enlarge the existing master bedroom, give it a little bit more space and a little bit more light. We came back, and after some discussion, we were hopeful to get going with the construction, but it was called out that we needed to come back again with this particular provision. In my application, I raised the Bartlett issue, which I do from time to time, and we don't want to get too legal on it, but the ordinance says what it says, and I'm not debating that. I think that's not disputed, and I don't think it's disputed that this is prior non-conforming use. But when it comes to the expansion of non-conforming uses or work that's beyond the original footprint, there's a statute that applies to it. It's 674:19, and it's very brief. It says a zoning ordinance adopted under RSA 674:16 shall not apply to existing structures or to the existing uses of any building. It shall apply to any alteration of a building for use, for a purpose, or in a manner which is substantially different from the use to which it was put before the alteration. My contention is long before the ordinance existed, this was a single-family residence. These modifications result in it being the exact same use as it always has been. We're not taking a house and making it into a restaurant or an amusement park, or I should say a vending machine, because that's the relevant case on it. So it's essentially the same use. So our position would be that a variance is not required, and I think that's a decision that you can make this evening. To the extent you don't agree with that, I also believe that we meet the criteria for the variance. When you look at the public interest and spirit of the ordinance standards, and I'll by reference the other two cases and the arguments there, under Farrar versus Keene and the substantial change in character of the neighborhood, not the case here. If anything, the other two variances may have had an impact, but here, the only one that will be impacted really is the property owner, because it faces away from the abutting property. It looks down at the river. Secondly, this is well above the floodplain for which this section of the ordinance was intended. You're not looking at base level elevation, which, if you recall from the first case, was 1.5 inches or so above the existing first floor. And if you add the additional foot or so required by the ordinance, we're at least 8 and probably 10 feet above that. So really no impact to the waterway. There's other cases to meet those two standards, both the spirit of the ordinance and the public interest. And if a single family is permitted in this zone, it's indicative that there isn't a substantial change to the neighborhood. When we look at the valuation prong, we've had two letters here from Mr. McKeon, an appraiser, stating that these improvements here will not diminish the value of the surrounding properties. In fact, I believe there was testimony from the abutter at the second hearing that this particular property never looked better. I think you can look at the pictures here in terms of value and take notice that here there'd be no negative impact because of the dormers that have been installed in this particular case. On the balancing test, certainly the harm to the applicant at this particular stage to have to tear that house apart and pull those things down would be a hardship. Also would be a hardship to whoever chooses to live in there to take the space of a bedroom, to give it a little more space and light, to fit modern furniture and be a little bit more consistent with current days would be unfair. In terms of the general public, you'll get a little bit more taxes, which something we talked about. The city likes to see things on the tax rolls. You get a house that's cleaned up and freshly landscaped. Hopefully some nice folks that move in there and call it home for a long, long time. In terms of the hardship, looking at it since Gray Rocks, the Justin Horton dissent, which flipped our hardship standard from one of having to show that you couldn't do anything else with it to a reasonable standard. Is there any fair and substantial relationship to the ordinance and the application of this property? I would say no, because we're well above what the flood hazard line is. There will be no increased impact because of water levels. If anything happens to this particular home because of flood, it's likely going to be on the first floor, which is already permitted. The only thing that I could see is likely possible if this home, which has been reinforced with a new foundation, were to float down the river, which has had in the decades that it's existed there, maybe you have a little bit of more lumber in the river, but that's about it. So as far as applying it to the upstairs improvements, I don't believe there's a fair and substantial relationship to it. And what's being proposed here are essentially minor modifications of making one room larger and putting in a walk-in closet all above the first floor level. And I think that's enough to conclude that the use is reasonable. That's pretty much it. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a non-conforming use. Is it also a non-conforming structure?
Yes.
It's a non-conforming structure, yes.
Thanks.
So I have a question on that, what you called the Bartlett analysis. Are you, so you're saying that, because typically if somebody is arguing that they don't need a variance at all, it's phrased to us as an appeal of the administrator's decision, but you're saying that you could appeal their decision, but you can also argue it at any time.
Yes, unfortunately, I was the unfortunate person to lose that case. Okay. So I made the same argument to you, to the Supreme Court, saying that they couldn't make that argument to the ZBA because they didn't make an administrative appeal. And the Supreme Court said, well, that's kind of technical. You can raise it at the ZBA, and they're the arbiters of the zoning ordinance, and if they determine that a variance is not necessary, that's in their prerogative without filing an administrative appeal. And from our perspective, I mean, the last thing you want to do is file an administrative appeal against someone that you respect and that you work with on a regular basis, because we're not calling into question what anybody did. It was all done in good faith here. So we're just saying this is a technical legal issue, which you don't wrestle with every day, right? Are these prior non-conforming uses, and, you know, are you expanding it in a bad way, or are you taking that second floor and making it into a vending machine park or something like that, which is not the case.
Other questions from the board?
Can you go through the hardship for me one more time?
Yeah, the fair and substantial relationship piece, right, that's the new,
Yeah, the unique part, the special circumstances.
well, the special conditions of the property. You're situated on a lot that you can't change, which by its nature is close to a water body, that after this house was built, the legislative body of this city decided to regulate. Wasn't done before, right? That's a unique piece of this property where it sits, that the property owner can't do anything about. It's been there, the house has been there. So it certainly has that special condition where it's subject to a regulation that wouldn't otherwise been at the time it was built, or isn't applicable to any other folks that are off the level of the water in a particular district.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can dig in, but it's probably easy. The application makes reference to a vertical enlargement?
Yeah, it's second floor, as opposed to being on the first floor, above the base flood elevation.
And so the expansion, though, the footprint's bigger, correct?
Not in this particular case. That's been dealt with in the prior applications.
Oh, so what you, okay.
So if you look at those two dormers, the lower part of it, for better or worse, it was either approved initially or approved through the prior variances. So the two things that we're talking about are above that level, but it's not expanding the footprint in any way. And thank you for bringing that out.
Okay.
Should have mentioned it.
Dr. Hutton, on the subject of the Bartlett appeal, what was your thinking in terms of requiring a variance in this case?
It's an expansion of a non-conforming use, so by adding area to the structure, even though it's adding area up, that still constitutes an expansion under our ordinance, which is an expansion of a non-conforming use, in this case, because single-family dwellings are not allowed in the floodplain.
So if I had a house that was in violation of the setbacks and I wanted to add a second floor to it, I would need to get a variance.
You wouldn't, you've issued those variances repeatedly.
Okay, very good. Not that I do, I'm just wondering. Any other questions?
And I'm trying to remember, was there some history of this where the permits were pulled by a previous owner and somebody purchased it with the expectation that the permit was, yeah, okay.
There's a relationship between the three people, so I'm clear. That initial guy started to build it with the hope of getting it done, couldn't pull it off. Mr. Grenier, and he wanted to come in and finish it because it wasn't done, you know, it was in flux, needed to get it done. He wanted to finish it under the existing building permit. Was told that he couldn't because he was a new person and had to apply for a new one.
You said that at the beginning, okay.
That was the progression of it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Cronin.
Thank you very much.
All right. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in favor of this appeal? Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in opposition? Please come forward. Swear to tell the truth and nothing but.
I do.
Thank you very much. If you'd sign in and also announce yourself for as you testify.
Sure. You sign this, I'll sign my name. We actually have, I brought these, which I'm going to speak to. There's a bunch of them, probably not enough, but.
Say your name.
My name is David Belser, 34 River Road, in a butter. You were actually going to read your part first. But.
And I am Roseanne Beaurivage at 34 River Road, also in a butter. I'm speaking against the issue because in the memorandum, there were a number of things I object to and have shaken my confidence that this appeal really is what it is. In fact, Mr. Cronin has just casually introduced the project as a home for somebody, a future buyer, a future homeowner, to live there when 2 months ago it was the actual contractor who is currently working on the house. So the story keeps changing, and that has led my mistrust and lack of confidence that this project is what it is. And so today I prepared something to kind of rebut the memorandum, saying there's no
When you speak
issue-
of the memorandum, you mean Attorney Cronin's submission to us?
What's published on
what
the
is
zoning board?
published on the agenda,
On the agenda or in the application?
the application.
Okay.
Excuse
Thank
me. One, that there was no issue with flooding, and the fact that this is all on the second floor. The community of homes on the Kentucky River in Concord have had to compromise their living on the waterfront and literally keeping a small footprint of their homes. Many of these neighbors would like to expand and improve and protect their assets. Those who do get building permits, wetland permits, and they abide by the local standards in the area. As far as the public interest, harm, and spirit of the ordinance, let me assure you that 30 River Road is visible from the road, visible from the river, and I get asked all the time what's going on there. Neighbors who would like to build up and out are paying attention to this property and what's being done. In January, Mr. Winter's comment about asking for a variance after the fact was possibly flaunting the code and would have an impact to the public, and that's what I think is going to happen. Is this going to be a loophole for future contractors and investors when they see a waterfront property here in Concord? This property was bought originally in the recent past in 2020, and the housing market was hot, and sellers were closing deals before the place got finished. In 2022, before the house once again was owned by Mr. Grenier, it initially was listed for as much as $799,000, unfinished. The neighbors noticed that, and during the time of that rebuild and demolition, I saw signs of expansion that had been obvious just 3 months into the project. I called a zoning inspector early on, and I wish I'd been more adamant about what I saw happening, because I knew it was in violation of wetlands laws and the zoning. As far as impact to abutters, it's now a much larger house than it was. It's not just the side facing the river. It's been punched out on the second floor on the other side. The other abutter, Kevin Blaine, looks right out at the whole lot. He owns a 1-bedroom and 1-bathroom home, and he now looks out at a building 3 times the size of his place. He's one of the neighbors closely watching what's happening at this meeting. And I want to point out that the house, as it was originally, was barely a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house in question, and it is now a 3 generous bedroom, 3-bathroom house with a giant living room and a kitchen. It's not the camp it used to be. I feel like this is an ongoing shell game about who owns River Road. And the one thing that hasn't changed, even though all the owners seem to exchange LLCs frequently, is that proper permits and requirements haven't been adhered to as far as renovating a grandfathered building. Every property owner and neighbor on this section of the river must go through permitting before work can be done. And the original owner disregarded this, and now everybody's saying it's all his fault. but nobody seems to be doing anything else. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know all the cases cited, but there has been no work done for at least 4 months now on the property. The porta potty has been picked up, and the site really looks abandoned, and I've lost confidence that I'm being told what's really happening here. I think it's an investment property, and I think it's all about the money.
Questions from the board? Thank you very
I feel
much.
like, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
You've kind of, based on new information, shifted your viewpoint a little, right? Because as of the last, I feel like the first hearing you were sort of somewhat against. The second hearing you were almost like a neutral, and now you're sort of strongly against.
Yeah, I am wrestling with my Catholic guilt. Ultimately, I want a good neighbor, and I was told in January that my neighbor would actually be the contractor working on it, and his family would be living there, and we have heard nothing.
The statement by the lawyer tonight implies that they're hoping to eventually sell this to a nice couple, and so are we. But, you know, a month ago, we were told that the nice couple was the contractor.
So are you,
Well, I have,
real quick,
okay.
is your primary concern tonight this third variance they're going for, or are you really more saying that the prior variances were based on some misrepresentation?
There's been a lot of subterfuge. Well, I want to be careful here. I'm not a lawyer. I'm pretty good at observing things and understanding them. There have been a lot of misrepresentations. There are misrepresentations that have been put before the zoning board on all 3 occurrences. I've documented some of them here. They're, within the realm of, but even tonight, describing the work that has been done on the second floor, the way it was described implies that, we pushed a dormer out here, we pushed a dormer out here. I've provided materials to this board previously that detail the extent of additional floor space that have been added to the second floor, and I don't remember, I don't have it in front of me, but we have it, we could probably pull it up, but it was, close to doubled on the second floor. The whole house itself, the floor space has been increased by about 150%. The porch underneath there, if you look at the brown house, the octagonal part that faces the river was a porch. It was a 3-season porch. It was not livable year-round. I've looked at the regulations for Concord, and if you want to turn a 3-season porch into an interior space and it's more than a certain size, it requires a permit. Well, guess what? That's now the big full-scale living space on the first floor. All the area above that floor has basically been turned into upper space floor as best possible while trying to maintain some semblance of the prior roof line. On the back side of the house where we talked about the mudroom, well, originally a stoop, which to me says a porch that's open, was the 22 by 7 foot addition on the back side of the house that was last meeting. Actually also includes another 3 feet on the second floor. It's totally enclosed. Last meeting we talked about it as if it was a mudroom. It's really, a major addition on the back side of the house, which increases the back room, which is typically the kitchen. So the paper I passed out goes through a lot of this. I can speak to it if you want me to, and
I think we have the drift.
Yeah. Okay. And the fact is, Mr. Grenier bought this in 2020 and has been involved, since then. And when Mr. Robluski did all of the illegal work, Mr. Grenier held the mortgage on the property. So, and Mr. Grenier is a developer contractor. These guys can do their business. I'm not trying to be a lawyer here. I'm not trying to say they're, doing stuff that's illegal. But presenting it as what it's not in order to get variances so that they can save an investment is what it feels like. And our change of heart is from the last meeting when we were told that one of them would be moving in. And frankly, it sounded like a stretch, but I wanted to believe it. I mean, we're not trying to be you know, somebody, you know, they might be my neighbor, you know? I don't want to be in a very adversarial position with them.
But our other neighbors who would like to expand their property are under the same obligation to abide by the law for living on the river
And
in the floodway.
This sets,
I think we understand the drift of what you're trying to say.
this sets a really bad precedent for, I mean, the guy next to me, the second house that's my abutter, and I abutted to, would love to do the same thing. He's going to come here and ask you for the same, you know, why can't I build up as far as I want? Why can't I expand out my footprint to whatever? And then, you know, we talk about property values and does it improve my property value? One of the values of my property is that, you know, I'm in a group of 4 houses. 2 of us have road frontage. The other 2 require access across our properties and under code cannot be substantially developed. The fact that they cannot be substantially developed actually adds to the value of my property because it means that you won't have a big house in your backyard. And, you know, so it is arguable whether or not this makes a big difference to the value of my property. I'll leave it at that because I could go on, obviously. And
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
good luck, yes.
That's a first. Usually we say good.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard in opposition to this appeal? Any comments from code enforcement?
Just a couple of things. One of the things that has been brought up is value. And as a floodplain community, we have to look at repetitive losses, and we have evidence from abutters that this has flooded before. And we're increasing the amount of value, so we're increasing the coverage that has to be maintained, which is going to increase the losses, which affects everybody in this community in the floodplain because it'll affect their rates. So in terms of value, I'd like to add that. And it was mentioned that about previous permitting. It is unclear whether any of this was permitted under the previous permits. There is no evidence that it was. And finally, again, because we're a floodplain community, we have to report to FEMA all the variances we grant. You have those additional criteria, which are that this is the minimum necessary to get a reasonable use out of the property. So just mentioning those 3 things to take into consideration, and that would be it.
Can you refresh my memory? I remember the second variance was with regard to the screened-in porch becoming completely...
Nope, that was the back end.
Of the back. Okay. What was the first variance again?
Because it's below flood elevation.
That was the foundation.
So the first floor and the basement are below flood elevation. We've already added on to the back, which was an increase in the non-conforming structure. And now that we're increasing on the floodway side, we're increasing the non-conformity of the use.
So,
And also increasing
And
the size
also
of the
structure, but
structure.
the use is the primary issue.
See, I had that case.
All set? Was there anything else?
Nope, that was it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Cronin, would you like to offer factual clarification in response to what you've heard?
Sure, I'll just take a general exception to some of the comments about misrepresentation. This evening, we're here on a very narrow issue, and I purposely tailored my comments to those 2 issues, and I stand by them as being correct. I think the thing of importance and frustration, and I know these folks owned the property at one point in time and made an effort to buy it back and probably would prefer to own it.
You've had your say, sir.
So, and to the extent you want to clarify, I can withdraw that. But there was some angst about the status of the site, and I get it, right, that it's not finished and it's in disrepair. I want you to know that we've pled and begged, and Dr. Hutton can confirm, to allow them to go forward and finish this, and we would take whatever remedial action we would have to after the fact. You know, this has been sitting empty and inflicting pain on someone. This thing's been sitting idle, disrepair for a long time. They want to get it finished, and they've been asking to get it finished. We asked for the building permit to reissue with conditions that if we didn't get this variance and were ordered to take it down, and that was the final decision after going through the courts, we'd take it down, we'd bond it, and we couldn't get that building permit. So this extent that it's sitting idle and sitting the way that it is, that's no fault of the applicant. As soon as they can get this going, they want to get it done as quickly as they can.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Winters.
Wasn't one of your sort of initial arguments that a lot of this had to do with the sort of incompetence or irresponsibility of, I think it's, I don't want to say the name because they're not really here, but that first owner, right?
I don't really know. We've asked for the building file. You had a building inspector here that I believe was assigned to this, that had conversations with the original developer. We've asked for the file on that. We haven't received it. I don't know exactly what was going on at the time, but a permit did issue. So I can't speak to what it was for or what the scope of it was.
But wasn't part of the argument before that, well, we kind of came into this sort of halfway completed project that this other person didn't really get all the right permitting for, so now we just need to finish it off, because if we don't finish it off, nothing can be done with it?
That's correct. That's accurate.
But is it, I mean, what is is there some type of business or relationship between that other person and the current owners, or is it a completely, third-party, arm's length relationship?
I'm going to explain it the best way that I can, and to make sure I'm accurate, I'm going to ask Mr. Grenier to
He's
come up.
coming, don't worry about it.
To come up here if I'm out of it. But Mr. Grenier had lent money to the initial person to do this particular project. The expectation was the first contractor was going to build it, finish it, pay him off, and that was going to be the end of his role. The first guy didn't finish it. Mr. Grenier came in with a contractor that wanted to get it done. With his experience, they came and inherited the mess, if you will, and wanted to get it done. So that's my understanding. So is there a connection? Yeah, they're not strangers. But Mr. Grenier is an independent guy. He's not in business with these people other than lending them money.
Swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Would you identify yourself for the record, please?
My name is Peter Grenier, and I was the original purchaser of the property. Sold it to John Robleski. John Robleski went ahead, pulled his permits with the town, started the renovation. Ran out of money, couldn't finish it. I held the mortgage on it. I had nothing to do with his framing, building, nothing. Never stepped foot in the house after I walked away from it. He couldn't finish it. I came back, called my mortgage in, couldn't pay me. Sold it to Chris. Chris is the new contractor who is actually the guy that's going to move into the property. I have no relation other than working relationship with him on my properties. He was interested in the house when I took it back, so I sold it to him. That was it. It was, and I didn't sell it. I didn't take repossession of it. John Robleski sold it to Chris. That was it. I had no other than owning it the first time.
So, and who's doing the work now?
Chris is. His name is Fabrizio. I call him Chris.
Fabrizio. Oh, he goes by Chris. It's Fabrizio Faria.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. He's the owner now. He's the one that's going to move in. He's the one doing the work. He is a contractor, framer. He's worked for me for several years now. That's the relationship, nothing else.
So, okay. So you still hold the mortgage, but he...
I don't hold any mortgage. Chris bought it all cash.
Oh, so you're no longer really involved other than...
Other than being here and bringing John to the meeting, that is all my intention. That's it.
Thank you.
Once this is done, I will walk away and Chris will finish the house.
Any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
With that, we'll declare the public testimony portion of the hearing closed. I think I'd like to quiz the board on one subject, and that's the question of the so-called Bartlett analysis. It strikes me that it's not on the agenda as a Bartlett analysis or a request to overturn code enforcement. So I don't know that we're obliged to undertake a Bartlett analysis in this case, are we?
If I may, yes, the Supreme Court has held that the zoning board, as an initial matter in every variance application, needs to determine whether the variance is necessary.
All right, thank you very much, Counselor.
Whether raised by the applicant or not?
Yeah.
Wow.
First time I ever made a mistake in the law.
I make them all the time.
So then it sounds to me, if based on what Ms. Spector-Morgan just said, that inasmuch as the issue has been raised, and we are theoretically obliged, although we don't formally do that, that we ought to undertake to determine whether or not we think a variance is required. Is that, do you all agree? No? Yes?
I haven't read the case, but based on what,
The Bartley case.
yeah, but based on what the attorney and Inspector Morgan just said, yes, I think we should.
All right. So why don't we start with that question? I'm going to start with Inspector Morgan. Do you think they meet the test of Bartlett or not?
I think they need a variance. If it was only a non-conforming use, I wouldn't think they need a variance. But because it's also a non-conforming structure, I think they need one.
Okay. Mr. Monahan, how do you look at it?
I agree, and I think there's probably some efficiency to us moving right on to that. So.
Okay. Mr. Wallner?
Yes, I agree too.
Mr. Winters?
I agree, and I'm inclined to give deference to the decision of the city, not, complete deference, simply because that's, how could we proceed otherwise?
Very good. Then, to keep the record clean, we probably ought to make a motion that we believe we support the requirement for a variance in this case. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I move that we find that a variance is required.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? The vote is unanimous. Now we move on to the question of the variance itself. I'm going to start this one. And Mr. Wallner's under the table. How do you see the question of adding more of a third floor? And then I'm going to run away because
Oh, gosh, this is so complicated.
yeah, it is.
Well, we don't have an increase in footprint. That's always where I start on variance requests for something like that. We're going up instead of out. We've already dealt with the other issues. I guess I'm going to defer and hear what the others have to say.
Okay. Mr. Monahan?
Yeah, I agree. There's a complexity here that is a lot to digest. It'd be nice if we could ask everybody to go into a room and work it out and tell us what they've worked out, but they're here asking us to do it. So.
Yeah, it sounds like there's, the fish is on our
Yeah,
plate.
that said, we just, as a general matter, I think Nick's observation is that oftentimes we look at just the footprint, and if it's kind of within the footprint, that's usually a good test that it's not becoming much bigger. But in this instance, might technically be within the footprint, but there's a lot going on here.
Indeed. Ms. Spector Morgan?
I think the variance should be denied for a few reasons. First, the hardship argument that was presented is basically that this is a non-conforming use and a non-conforming structure, and that's not a hardship. There's nothing about the land or the property that necessitates the increased square footage on the second floor. And so I think there's no hardship. More than that, under the special criteria, we do need to find that the variance is the minimum necessary considering the flood hazard to afford relief. We've already granted a lot of relief here to allow this structure to be increased, to be usable, to be reasonable. And I think this might be a bridge too far. And finally, we did hear evidence from the abutters that they believe this is going to impact their property value, and there was no evidence presented by the applicant that it would not. So for those reasons, I would vote to deny the variance.
Mr. Winters?
Yeah, I agree. I think it doesn't really matter who's going to live in the property, but I think we heard last time, the subtext here is that the reason why, the reason for the need for the variance is a benefit to the whole area because it really reduces the density, which is part of why which was all the neighbors value, and it almost becomes an arms race because probably most of these properties could use a lot of improvement because they're older and they have limitations. So if they all came in and wanted to get a variance to continue to improve, it would really completely change the character of the neighborhood. And I think we have been pretty generous, but the total amount that is continuing to grow in size, I think, is becoming out of the character with the neighborhood, and I do think affects the the value of the surrounding properties.
I'm of two minds on this one. On the one hand, I hear what Mr. Winters and Inspector Morgan say about the potential effect on other people's properties. It's true that the minimum variance may be exceeded here because you don't have to have a large second story on the house for it to be usable as a house, and I expect many houses in the neighborhood don't have that and are usable. The argument that it affects other people's insurance rates, I'm not sure I buy. Flood insurance, yes, it's affected by other people in the flood zone, but it's also affected by the value of the property itself, and premiums are adjusted for the individual policyholder. So I'm not sure I see that, but I do, and I'm also concerned about the fact that it's been a very sloppy project, and there's been in a sensitive area, and I can't begin to speculate about the motives or the methods of the people who worked on it, but I don't know that it's up to the zoning board, given the reservations that we have about specific requirements for variance, in this case the property value and the minimum variance, to be enabling that sort of thing. So although I can see an argument for saying, go ahead, finish it, strictly speaking, I have to agree with my colleagues who would vote against granting variance, which means, strictly speaking, that's what I'll do. Which is a long way of saying, yeah. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I will make a motion to deny the requested variances for the reasons I stated, and also based on the cumulative impact that Attorney Winters noted.
Is there a second?
I second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion to deny, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The vote is unanimous? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. The vote is unanimous. The variance is denied. All right. That brings us to Highland Street. This is case 0149, Highland Street, 6522/Z38. I assume that's the plot number from the property maps. RN Neighborhood Residential District, MDR Rehab and Development LLC are the owners. The applicant seeks variances pursuant to Article 2845, Development of Attached and Multifamily Dwellings, to allow the development of a 4-unit attached dwelling. Variances would be required as follows. Article 2845 D1, minimum tract requirements for having 10,788 square feet where 25,000 square feet is required. Article 28.4 D5 D2, maximum lot coverage and density having 16 units per acre where 4 units per acre are allowed. Article 28.45 D5, perimeter buffer required, 10 feet where 75 feet is required. And Article 28.7A8, restrictions on backing into a street. Cars will back onto Highland Avenue. Gentlemen, can I swear you in? You swear to tell the truth and nothing but it?
You do.
If you'd sign in, that would be great, and then identify yourselves for the record.
Good evening. My name is Rob Deegan with S&H Land Services. I don't need to be this close to the mic. With me today is Ray McMahon of MDR Rehab and Development, the property owner.
What would you like us to know? I beg pardon?
I'm Ray McMahon from MDI Rehab and Development.
So I just wanted to clarify, maybe I misunderstood, but it looks to me on the sheet here, I believe the maximum density is 10 units per acre in this zone for attached multifamily. attached multifamily dwellings, not 4. I may misunderstand that, but that's what I got from the chart in the zoning ordinance.
This is a quarter acre lot, right?
About that, yes.
So it's 4 on a quarter acre.
Right, but what's the
Right.
maximum
The
density?
maximum is,
The stated density here says 4 units per acre, which is not accurate.
oh, I see what you're saying. Let me look.
Not that it's a huge deal, we're asking for what
It
we're
is.
asking for,
It's a
but
huge deal.
It is a huge deal.
as stated, this is the property, well, not there anymore.
Yeah, I gotta look
Um,
for
Let's
the,
figure this out first.
Yeah, of course.
So if it's 16 units per acre and we have a quarter acre, it's 4 units.
right, but it's not 4 per acre. It might have been the way I worded it.
Oh, I see.
For a quarter
See what I'm
acre?
saying?
Yeah.
4 units per quarter acre.
So it just could be a drafting error there.
Yep, I think it is. Just gonna double check. In which case, I will defer to Ms. Spector Morgan.
It's fine because
Okay.
it's less of a variance, if that's the case.
I believe that's the case.
Okay.
Yep.
So they're asking for 16 units per acre, where 10 per acre would be permitted.
Correct.
But they're only asking for 4.
On a quarter acre.
On a quarter acre.
So when you
Oh, right.
size it out.
It was a drafting error.
Okay.
when I-
So 10 is what's allowed.
10 units per acre are what's allowed.
Right.
So for a quarter acre, that
It would be 16.
So
It would
there-
be,
2.5.
10,
2.5.
2.5, right.
Right.
it's getting late. It's very warm
Okay.
in here. I know.
So
yeah.
that'll need to be reworked
Yep.
for the record, but.
Yep, I will.
Are you,
Sorry.
are you in agreement with us? That's what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Carry on, please.
Very good. So this is the property, obviously it's vacant at this time, and what we're hoping to do is develop it with a 4-unit townhouse-style condominium. We had a meeting, a Zoom meeting with the department staff to discuss this. Didn't raise any major concerns other than we need variances, and they pointed those out. So here we are. There is a very similar development directly across the street, which is also, it's 4 townhouse-type condominium units over there. And a similarly sized, I believe they're slightly larger, but not 0.4 acres large. So the zoning ordinance says that we need to have a 25,000 square foot lot to develop townhouse units at all, as well as the density requirement. And then it asks for a 30, 50, or 75-foot buffer depending on the stories. I believe 75-foot got into the application here. I was discussing this with Ray earlier. He's actually looking to do 2 stories above grade, so it would be a 50-foot requirement, which would still completely wipe out the building envelope on this lot.
Can you repeat that? How you got to 2 stories instead of 3? Sorry.
I was just discussing his intention to build. We haven't supplied any architectural drawings at this time because we felt it would be better to see if the board would even let us do this before we engaged an architect to design the building. So we are proposing 2 driveways entering the lot. Each would serve 2 of the units. They would have to back into the street because of the topography, which you can see on the plan there. The back half of the lot is very steep. So in order to avoid having to cut into that hillside, we would need to put the building pretty far forward. That means not a lot of room for driveways. But Highland Street is pretty quiet. I don't think that would be a major issue for traffic safety having to back out there. And it's nice and straight. You can see pretty far. So it's not like you have poor visibility.
Question. Why not build 2 units and configure them so you don't have to back into the street? And then you also wouldn't be overbuilding the number of units, if I correctly understand the arithmetic. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be 8 units per acre.
Could you pull it up as Google Street View? I found
Yep.
that pretty useful.
Yep.
I'm sure there's a reason, but the question, why not build 2 units, organize them because you wouldn't take up as much footprint, you could probably configure the parking so you didn't have to back into the street. Why not do that?
We'd like to develop it as much as possible and
It's
given. Go ahead.
It's kind of shaded, but you can see the stone wall and like how steep it really is if you zoom back. I mean, it's really poorly lit, but
Are you talking about the hillside in the back?
yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult to see there, but.
Who owns the lot now?
Mr. McMahon owns the
Has
lot.
there ever been anything on that lot?
Not that I'm aware of.
It used to be owned by the house at 21, which is to the east. That owner also owned this lot. I don't know the full history. I don't have the deed history in front of me, but they owned it for a while and just apparently never did anything with it.
The back of the lot slopes up or slopes down?
Up.
Do you know how many units, how many bedrooms are your units going to be?
What do you think on that?
Probably 2 because of the square footage.
So what is the hardship that justifies the increased density?
Well, there's a thing across the street that's basically the same development. So it's sort of an unfair denial to allow it across the street and not allow it here.
But hardship has to arise from this property.
There is a need for multifamilies in the area, and there are some on the street that have already been built and approved.
We can't hear you, could you speak into the microphone?
Yeah, that,
Sure.
if you'd move right over there, you go. Great, thank you.
There's a need for multifamilies in the Concord area, and there's a building directly across the street that has pretty much the same thing that we're proposing to build.
Very good. Is there anything else you'd like us to know?
No. I think we've covered about it, everything I had.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you, gentlemen. If you'd step down. Is there anyone here who would like to be heard in favor of this appeal? Is there anyone here who'd like to be heard in opposition to it? Apparently there is. Okay. Let me fill you in on a couple of things. One, anybody who wants to be heard, we will listen to. However, we can only consider issues that relate directly to the criteria for variance. And if you're simply going to repeat what the last fellow said, that's not terribly helpful to us, because it's the quality, not the quantity of what you have to say that is useful to us. So I'll leave it to you all to decide how many of you would like to testify. If you'd all like to testify, you can all testify, but if you all say the same thing, I'm going to start making funny faces at you.
And Chair, they could simply affirm what the other person said if
They could do that. They could do that. They could nominate a spokesperson. They can have 2 or 3 people come up. It's up to you. Okay. Well, let's have the first one up then. I understand.
Your turn.
No rush. Swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Absolutely.
Would you sign in, please?
So my name is Jackie Teague. Wow, that is a loud microphone.
Last name?
Jackie Teague, and I own the property catty corner from this one. And one point I would like to make is that the property that they're using as their point of reference is the former Concord Boys and Girls Club. It was a cement block building that something had to be done with when the Boys and Girls Club moved 3 blocks down the street to its current location. And some neighbors bought it thinking they could turn it into something useful and discovered that the whole thing was a single wall cement block thing, and it had to be turned into something, and it got turned into the 4 condos with already an existing parking lot in the back, and they developed tandem 2-car parking underground, accessed from the back. So it's very different from what they're proposing on this lot across the street with almost a 90-degree hillside behind it that they're contemplating digging into. That doesn't matter to me if they want to dig into it, but I mean, that's a dramatic hillside. The other thing is, I was astonished at how extraordinary the difference is between what the variance rules are and how different this proposal is. You've just changed what you were doing with the lot density, but it's 2.5 times too small to put this particular building on. It's 7.5 times too small for the buffer thing by reducing the closeness of the proposed building to the boundaries. It will certainly box in the neighbor to the left and the right, although the people on the street above have been tipping their yard waste over that steep hill for many, many years, and I think this property goes almost up to the level lots behind it, so there's going to be a lot of stuff on that hillside that someday somebody will have to deal with. It is a narrow street. It's been declared a narrow street by the city of Concord 3 years ago. They declared one side of the street parking on Highland Street, and it's on the side of the street that this is proposed. I'm also interested, if we ever have snow again, I'm not sure where they're going to put the snow. They've got these 2 driveways that touch each other, and so the people are going to have to work out something about who's going to shovel which side, but it doesn't look like there's very much room to put the snow. And so I know that a couple of years ago, we had 2.5 feet of snow all at one time. I have a double lot, so I've got, and a 2-car driveway, so I have plenty of place to put my snow. But the little 1-room house on the other side, the one that came with this property, this was a foreclosed property of a sweet little house with a side lot, and Mr. McMahon renovated the little house and did a beautiful job and said that he wanted to put 4 condos on that vacant lot at the time when I was standing in front of my own house, and I said, gee, 4 is a lot. I'm still thinking 4 is extraordinary, too many. Somebody here on the board just said something about just the 2 that would fit in with the zoning variance. I wouldn't have any trouble at all with 2. 3 is pushing it, 4 is out of the question. Highland Street is narrow. Most of us already back into our own driveway, so we're not backing out into the street already because the street is so narrow, it's hard to see who's coming. And half the street goes like this and then levels off in front of the property that we're talking about, so you can't really see people coming up the hill, and you can't see how fast they're going. I'm concerned about how many cars go with each of these units. I cannot tell from the drawing how many cars fit in each one of these driveways. The Boys and Girls Club property turned into condos has tandem underground parking for 2 cars and a great big parking lot in the back where if their condo association let them, I think an extra car could probably park in that giant parking lot behind. I think many apartment units and condo units and stuff now have 2 people in them with each having a car. I don't understand from the proposal where they're going to put the 2nd car, and I don't know where company is going to park. When you see how narrow the property is compared to where the driveways are, they aren't going to want to be blocking anybody else's driveway. So I just don't know where all these cars are going to go, because that's right now where everybody else on the street is parking when they cannot park on my side of the street. Okay, so I misunderstood or could not hear clearly what was said about how many stories this building is going to be. Is it going to be 2 stories or 1.5 or 3? What did he say?
I don't think they know yet.
I see. Okay. I noticed that there wasn't a side drawing. There's only the bird's eye view, but there's only a side drawing. Just let me see if I had anything else to say. I might be done. Okay. I just don't know why it says Highland Avenue. There is no Highland Avenue in Concord. That's a typo. It's Highland Street. Okay. So he's saying now that it wants to be condos. When I spoke with him when he was renovating the little house, he was talking about 4 condos at the time, and I told him at the time I thought 4 was a little bit much. But apparently he really wants to maximize his profit and put as many in there as possible. I assume that anybody who moves in will be wonderful. I'll be thrilled to have them as neighbors. I don't think it's any of my business, but I would just not like to have 8 more cars and 2 feet more of snow and lots more activity. It's a very low-key street and a very narrow street. You should drive down sometime. It's adorable. Okay. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much.
Okay, good.
We're the only board that offers that service. Who would like to be heard next? Please come forward. Good evening. You swear to tell the truth and nothing but?
I swear to tell the truth.
Would you jot your name on that sheet and also let us know what it is?
My name is Joyce Cotnor. I am the daughter of Calliope, who lives in one of the condo units across the street, and I am also an owner of that condo. So we have a lot of concerns about the fact that they're saying that it's really not a busy street, it's a very quiet street. There's a lot of pedestrians on that street constantly, walking dogs, young children. So I think my main concern is the backing out onto the street. I'm very concerned about the closeness of the condos being next to my mother's neighbors. It would be literally pretty much right on top of Savannah's garage area, and it's a very, very steep hill in the back there. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of buildable flat land to be able to accommodate 4 condos and 2 driveways. And it is a narrow street, and you know, during the winter time with the plowing, and we've even had issues with fire trucks or emergency vehicles not being able to pass from the streets because it is so narrow and there will be like a vehicle parked there, so.
Thank you very much.
Question, is it a one-way street or not?
It's a 2-way street, but it is extremely narrow, and you can only park on one side of the street, and even with parking on one side of the street, it's very hard. If there is another car coming, you basically have to pull aside to let someone go through.
There's sidewalks on the street?
No. Oh, well, there's sidewalks on the side that my mother lives on. There are no sidewalks on the other side, right? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Who else would like to be heard? Please come forward. Hello.
My name is Savannah Morgan.
You swear to tell the whole truth, Ms. Morgan?
Yes, I do.
Ma'am?
I swear.
Would you jot down your names? And I understand one of you is named Savannah Morgan, and I'd be delighted to meet the other.
Jerry Campbell Smith. Would you like me to speak while she's signing?
I think that'd be a great idea.
Excellent. I am at 21 Highland Street, so my property would abut the condo request.
as a resident who is able to back out of my driveway onto Highland Street. As it was previously noted, it does come up from a hill, and there have been many times when I am backing out where I'm met almost instantaneously with a car coming right up upon me. This dwelling is going to decrease my property value. It is going to be on top of my property line, and I think that's about it for me.
I'm on the other side, which it would also abut closer to my property than I would
Are
like.
you also on Highland Avenue?
I'm on 31 Highland Street.
Street? No Avenue, street.
I have already contacted the town hall about the fact that I have repeatedly not been able to get out of my own driveway already. There is no enforcement on the fact that it is a one-way street parking, so there's often people on both sides, and I can't get out of my road on a very normal basis. So if you add more cars to that on the side that you're supposed to be parking on, there will be no room. I'm afraid that my property value will go down, and I don't see a hardship for the fact that there needs to be 4 when there's plenty of homes going up in Concord.
Yeah,
Any
no
questions?
opposition to 2, obviously,
Yeah,
but
2 is
forcing 4 onto that small lot just seems excessive.
And they would need to go within our boundary lines to feasibly somehow squish that in there.
Any questions from the board? Thank you. Who else would like to be heard? Mr. Schweiker. Swear to tell the truth and nothing but.
Yes, I do. And Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I'm Roy Schweiker. I'm not in a butter, but this is one of those parking situations. In a way, I'm surprised. Only 4 parking spaces are required for 4 units. You don't even know how large the units are. They might be 3 stories, they might be 3-bedroom, they might even be 4-bedroom, and 1 car is simply not enough. I think that's outrageous to, think you can get away with that. I'd like to point out, and once again, with my experience with such a thing, that here's a lot that used to not have anything on it, so people were probably used to parking in front of this lot, which they'll no longer be able to do. So it's going to reduce the parking on the street, even if these people only have 1 car each, which I doubt. So I think based on the parking issue, I would in no way want to allow this sort of thing. If they reduced it to a reasonable number of units, then there would be room to create, say, 2 parking spaces for each unit, and that would be more appropriate depending on the size of these. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Any comments from code enforcement?
No.
Very good. Mr. Deegan, Mr. McMahon, would you like to offer any factual clarification in response to what you've heard?
I did want to clarify very quickly that what was envisioned here was for there to be garage unders in the front of those, so it would be 2 spaces per unit provided on the lot, not 1. And I would also like to state that I don't think it's fair to block someone's development just because you want to park on the street. That's sort of a last one in, doesn't get to build situation. All that said, we would like to request to be tabled in order to refine our proposal.
Okay.
I think whatever we come up with will probably still require some variances, so we will probably still need to be back before you, but maybe we can come up with something that is less contentious.
When do you want to be tabled until?
Next month, ideally, but if that agenda is too full, then I guess we'll have to go 2 months.
I'm just wondering how that affects the agenda. If they change the design,
If they change the design, it's a new variance because it's a different application in terms of what they're asking for. So they would have to, if you table it and they change it, they'll have to withdraw this one and put forward another one. Like we did with First Church a few times, they withdrew their previous variance and then put forward something else.
So we could table it, but you would have to make a new case, is what we're saying. Tabling it means we haven't, we do it without prejudice, we haven't made a decision one way or the other.
Okay.
We can certainly do that. Is there anything else you'd like us to know?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
They could withdraw it, couldn't they?
They could do that later.
They can do that
Anytime.
They can do that
You
without.
could do that now.
or-
Yeah, you could withdraw it if that's what you prefer to do.
Yeah, I'll have to figure out the logistics of that and
All right,
get back
well,
to you.
in order not to leave it hanging out there, we'll put it on the table. And then if it stays on the table forever, that's where it stays. And if you come in with a superseding case, then we'll deal with that.
Sounds good.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Dr. Tracy?
Yeah.
Just for my own information, on a four-family, how many parking spaces are required?
8.
That's
So
what I
there's,
thought.
as he stated, there'd be a garage under
Garage
for one
under,
and then
right,
one in the
yeah.
driveway.
But I just wanted to clarify for them, so.
Yep.
It is 2
It's
spaces
2 per unit always.
yes. Yep, that's what I thought.
I move to continue the application to the May agenda.
Is there a second?
Sure.
It's been moved and seconded to continue the app to the May agenda. Any discussion? All in
Yeah.
favor?
I would just say real quick, I mean, I didn't see any special circumstances at all, so I think historically we have been pretty lenient about tabling things. So I'm not going to object, but
Well,
yeah,
there's no impact.
yeah. Well, other than all the neighbors have to come back.
Well, they would have to come back for a new case. I mean,
So,
they can come
yeah,
back with different designs.
So if it's tabled to May, is it noticed again?
No.
Only if
'Cause
it's
you're-
changed.
Right, your date's certain, so the existing application could come back in May.
And they could, if they came back in April with a altogether new case and proceed with that, they could withdraw the other one.
We're past the April deadline, so it's gonna be May no matter.
Yeah, okay.
If you withdraw, do you get your money back?
No.
What's
We've already sent the notices, that's
I
the
know.
cost.
Never get your money back.
What's the May meeting date?
May is, May 1st is the meeting date.
May 1st.
I think we have a motion and a second.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? The case is recessed until the May meeting. The next case is, I have a conflict of interest on, so I'm going to stand down, and Mr. Wallner is going to chair the hearing. And Mr. Davy, would you be so kind as to sit down on this one, to make a 5-minute board?
Me or her?
No, you.
Oh, because they're both stepping away, that's right.
No, just
No,
No.
Nick, chair can do that.
What?
I said the chair can do that, he can
He
pick
gets to
whoever he
pick the
wants.
alternate.
Oh, okay, go for it.
I am or she is, sorry.
You are.
Oh.
Do you have the paperwork?
I mean, I read up on it, but he took my copy.
Yeah, go for it.
Although I don't see the arts in the audience.
I think we just made them nervous.
Over there on the right.
Yeah. Dr. Tracy.
Nick is acting chair. And Mark, yep, Mark is sitting for,
Turn off the.
yeah.
I think you just made him nervous.
What am I doing? I'm looking for the case file.
Yep.
No, you can't. That's beautiful.
Oh, anything other than. No, I know. No. I know. That was a. That's
But
a-
I mean, they'll do another time. Maybe they'll do 3 and all 3.
Really?
Like my 3? Can't even tell it's a 3. My driveways are
Where are you?
huge. I'm on East Side Drive. You can't tell it's a 3. My driveways are huge. I'm on almost an acre of land. And You don't have to back into the three, two of them are together.
No, you actually should not have to miss about it, especially where we have a hearing pending. And he doesn't know.
I missed it. That's all right.
I've voiced that to, I told Chris Carr.
And I'm not pushing lawyers, because lawyers are, but some people might point.
Well, that's why.
The fucking barbershop. I'm like, yeah. Like, it makes me sad.
Take the restaurant.
Huh?
I know.
Yeah, I know.
The first one.
I felt the same way about luxury apartment.
Was that it?
Which is a film.
Really could have, yeah.
But I really, I was.
That's not okay.
Hardship question. I was like,
This one I can tell is they really did
I've
have
known him for years.
hardships.
I know.
They weren't the kind of hardships
He's a
that
big
the
stake
code
in the
recognizes.
city, and I
Well,
get it.
sure,
I get
and
it.
so does Mark. Mark
Well,
subdivision.
Yeah, you were trying.
I was trying.
You were trying.
Well, I don't think I'm rolling.
We still have a lot to do.
I know.
Go to the Dominican.
Oh, nice.
Somebody said, well, do you have to stay the
In a resort. Depends if the time
people in the
period.
audience if I just walk
And the
out
resort
and
provides
not with me?
transportation too.
Oh, you could.
Even if I'm not.
People-
I'm still missing Jim. Be okay.
People do it all the time.
Do they really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm not leaving the resort.
I used to.
We're still in session.
was an
We
alternate.
didn't actually call a recess.
We are? We're still on the record?
So I was recorded, so I'm being.
Oh, that's being recorded?
Were we just done?
Let you know. Okay, you're all back.
We're all back. Let's go.
He said we have. He goes, you never do. Sorry. This guy knows the rules better than me.
All right, everyone, our next case tonight is case 0152024, 143 Hopkinton Road, RO District, Open Space Residential District, with the applicants of Stephen and Kimberly Arndt owners. Applicant seeks variance to build an addition and to reestablish a two-family use of the property where such use is prohibited. Variances would be required as follows. 1, Article 28.4.1D, minimum yard requirements to allow for an 8-foot addition to be 32 feet from the property line where 40 feet is required, and Article 28.2.4J, table of principal uses to permit use A2 duplex, two-family dwelling in an RO district. As you sign in, please state your name. And you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. Can you just pull that microphone a little closer to you, this extra one right here? Yes.
I only got one out, I do.
Oh, is
Steve.
Steve Arndt?
I do?
I do.
Great, thank you. What would you like us to know?
I'll try to be brief. Come before you asking for two variances involving a building at 143 Hopkinton Road. The building was built in the 1950s, at a time when the current zoning. Can you hear me?
You're welcome to sit down. Yeah.
Okay. The building is and always has been comprised of two separate dwelling units, each with their own heating system and septic system. Currently, the west side is occupied. We are asking for a variance that would allow us to reestablish the dwelling unit on the east side of the building. We also asked for a variance that would allow the addition of an 8-foot by 15-foot airlock entry mudroom and entry porch on the east side of the building. The addition would provide a sheltered and safer entry and exit path to the dwelling. The details of the proposal are provided in the application. Thank you for your consideration.
So, what's the current use? Is it currently being used as one single family?
No. Well, we bought the building in 2017. It's a two-dwelling unit building. We renovated the half that was still being recently lived in, and that is occupied. The other half has had a number of commercial operations there, and the most recent of which was a a chair caning operation.
What kind of?
A chair caning operation. There was reputedly a barber shop there at one time. It's now empty, and we asked for a variance to permit turning it into a rental unit. It has been in the past.
Could we see an aerial of that,
Yep.
please?
Is the layout of the building feasible for it to be one contiguous owner occupied, or would that wouldn't really make sense with the way it's laid out?
The way it's laid out is two separate dwelling units. In order to get from one to the other, you have to go out one's door, go down the sidewalk, and come back in.
Did I see in the notes that there's still part of a kitchen in the
Yes.
second?
And this doesn't qualify as an ADU because it's too big?
I didn't even ask, they asked for it to be a duplex.
Okay.
So, are you comfortable with saying out loud, a condition that one side be owner occupied, or the idea is you would like to rent both out?
Yes, we'd like to rent both out. One is occupied by our first tenant there. The other is empty.
A duplex is a permitted use in the district? No, okay. Nope, that's one of the variances. Pay attention.
Yep, that's okay.
But a stupid question probably, but what does that mean, an airlock entry?
Oh,
What is
in other
airlock?
words, if you have a door on your house and you open the door and whammo, you're in your living room. There's the exchange of the cold air and the weather coming into your living space. An airlock entry means it's basically an unheated space, but you're coming in to the area, shutting the door on the weather, then entering your living space.
That's what that means. Got it. Okay.
And from the exterior, other than adding this entranceway, will there be any other changes to the property?
No.
Is the, yeah, I'm looking at that wraparound driveway is there now.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to picture, trying to picture where this is on Old Hopkinton.
It's just before you hit Courier Road, so it's
It's on the south side of the road.
Okay.
Right.
Big, long, sloping backyard.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. 17 acres behind.
And the rear abutter is St. Paul's?
Yes.
They are, but it's
Yes.
way
It's
down by
woods. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, quite far down.
Okay.
way down by the pond.
You know, I'm sorry, I think someone else asked, but are there other multifamily houses in the neighborhood?
I'm sorry?
Are there other multifamily?
There is a house across the street and down one that has a apartment above the garage, but that is a situation where it's the parents living with the children.
Mhm. And I don't know if this matters, or not, but does St. Paul still own property, faculty property in the neighborhood?
They
I don't
would
think so. Not in the
You
neighborhood.
mean residential property?
Yeah.
No, the Freaky Fields would be the abutter to the property, to our property. And then beyond that, beyond that would be, you'd have to go a ways
Okay.
to get to their residential. I think you have to even go beyond the cemetery, St. Paul Cemetery, before you hit their first residential property.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from members of the board? No? Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in favor of this appeal? Is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to this appeal? Seeing none, Dr. Hutton, no comments. With that, I'll declare the hearing closed. Mark, I'll start with you. What do you think?
My gut is saying yes on the duplex and no on the setback. I think it would be a lot of effort to get it to, I guess, the back to that commercial use or to, like they said, to convert it into a whole contiguous single-family unit. The setback, I'm not as convinced.
Andrew?
Yeah, I think due to the pre-existing design of the property, it clearly would be a hardship for it to have to be used as one single-family home, which is what the zone calls for. So the real question in my mind is this something that should be more like an ADU where we would put an owner occupied, or could we allow it as I'm comfortable allowing it as two rentals, because it seems like that is kind of how it's laid out, and the impact on the surrounding neighborhood will probably be very minimal since there's so much land around there. I think it's a harder question on the airlock, but I'd be inclined to likely approve that, because I think it's a pretty modest change, and it's really just making one of the units more functional in a way that is probably consistent with sort of modern living standards.
Thank you.
I'm inclined to grant both. I think with regard to the duplex, the hardship is that the structure exists as the structure is. And it doesn't make any sense to require that second unit be modified in any way where it can be used as a residential unit. I don't think it will diminish surrounding property values. It's not going to change the character of the neighborhood because it's already there, and there's no justice in denying the variance. I'm also inclined to grant the requested setback variance. I think that having an entryway is a reasonable use of a property, and given the location of the house on the property, there really is nowhere else to put it unless you sort of put it right out front, and I'm not sure that would be terribly useful. And again, I don't think it's going to diminish surrounding property values or alter the character of the neighborhood or anything like that. So I'm inclined to grant both.
Thank you. Jim?
I agree with Laura. I'm inclined to grant both. I think that setback issue, it's such a big piece of property around all of them. It's really de minimis impact, and I appreciate the energy efficiency value it would add to the home to have the airlock entry.
Mark, you wanted to add something?
I was just clarifying that the addition is for an entry. For some reason I had it in my head that it was a 3-season porch, or like a...
Okay. And I'm inclined to agree with my colleagues. Are we ready for a motion?
I'll move to approve.
You can do both
One
together.
Do you want us to divide them up, Mark?
Huh?
Do you want us to divide them into two?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or no.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll move to approve both variances.
I will second for the reasons previously stated.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Now, do you have everything you need?
I have everything I need. Thank you very much.
And with that, I'm going to relinquish my chair back to Mr. Carly.
You're
Where's
going
he
to
go?
run screaming from the chairs.
You go faster. Go faster with me, right?
Thank you, Nick.
This place we rented a house when we moved to Concord when I was in 5th grade.
Thank you.
No, so
Readington.
on Readington.
I don't even know where that is.
All right. The next case is case 0151, 8 Gale Street, RM Medium Density Residential District. William Young Properties LLC are the owners. The applicant seeks variances to allow the development of a single-family dwelling. Variances would be required as follows. Article 2841B to permit a single-family home on a lot with approximately 8,579 square feet, where 12,500 square feet are otherwise required. And Article 2841C to permit a single-family home on a lot with approximately 66 feet of frontage, where 100 feet is otherwise required. Mr. Arnold, you swear to tell the truth and nothing but it?
Yes, I do.
Would you identify yourself for the record, please?
John Arnold from Warren Reno, representing the applicant.
Chris?
Sir.
Next agenda, and this is yours, is this?
Yeah, that explains the illegible scrawl on this one. Please proceed.
Thanks. So the property is 8 Gale Street. Plan is up on the screen.
The highlighted area is actually 2 lots. I'll explain that in a moment. But the property zone medium-density residential. The lot was initially created in 1894. It's about 8,600 square feet. It has about 66 feet of frontage. Sometime in the, I believe it was the early 2000s, the city involuntarily merged this property with the adjacent property, 20 Reddington. The merged property is what you see highlighted right there. So as you know, the legislature enacted a statute that prohibits involuntary mergers, provides a process to restore the 2 lots as they existed before they were involuntarily merged. The city council restored the 2 lots in the fall of last year. So on the right side of the screen, you can see the original lot lines, the 2 lots, individual lots making up the larger highlighted square on the left. 20 Reddington is the one on the corner. 8 Gale is the one on the top. And you can see on that aerial that there was an existing home on 20 Reddington. That was in pretty poor condition. It's since been torn down. 8 Gale has always been vacant, but the entirety is now vacant. Mr. Young is looking to rebuild a house on 20 Reddington and to build a new house on 8 Gale, so 2 single-family homes. Both the houses would comply with the setbacks, with lot coverage requirements, all of that. And we have 2 applications in. This was announced just as the first application, 8 Gale, but they're related. They're essentially identical. This application for 8 Gale has 2 variance requests. One is for lot size. 12,500 feet is required in this district. The lot has about 8,600 square feet, so it's about 4,000 square feet short. And frontage, the lot, as I mentioned, has 66 feet of frontage. 100 feet is required. The only difference between the 2 applications is that 20 Reddington has sufficient frontage. There's just a request there for the lot size. Tracy, do you have the GIS that you could pop up for a second? Thank you.
Right there.
Great. So yeah, actually that's a pretty good zoom. Just briefly on the criteria, on the public interest in the spirit of the ordinance, the variances won't alter the essential character of the neighborhood or threaten public safety, health, or welfare. You can see just above the property on the GIS, there are 2 lots. Those are 6 Gale and 7 Tuttle. Those are identical dimensions to the 2 lots we're talking about right here, same frontage, same lot size. They were all part of the same subdivision that was done in the late 1800s. You can see on the right side across the street, another property, 5 Gale. It's pretty close to the same dimensions, what we're talking about here. And then just down to the left of our property, there's a very small lot, I think it's 22 Reddington, that's much smaller in terms of both lot area and frontage. So point being that putting a house on these lots, albeit slightly undersized and slightly less frontage, is still consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. That point also, I think, addresses the substantial justice criteria. There won't be any harm to the general public as a result of this. And the benefit to Mr. Young is substantial because without the variances, the lots are not developable. Couldn't put anything on this lot, couldn't be used. Property values won't be diminished, again, for the same reasons, consistent with what's around there already. Won't be anything out of the ordinary. And on the hardship criteria, the lot's over 100 years old. The size is what it is. The frontage is what it is. There's not a way to change that without merging lots. And as I said, the lots need the variances to be used for any purpose.
But without, could you just build one property without the variances, or you'd solve a frontage problem?
If the 2 lots were merged, it would meet the lot size and the frontage, and you wouldn't need any variances to do that. But doing that would require a merger, which the state statute allows us to separate them and restore the lots that were there before, and requiring that would essentially undo that right.
And if it hadn't been for the involuntary merger and then the re-merger by statute, would you need a variance, or would you be considered grandfathered in?
I think, well, so the merger and re-merger has a part of it which disqualifies us. The other part is that the Concord ordinance doesn't treat the lots as non-conforming buildable lots if they're owned in common with the adjacent lot. So in this case, Bill Young owns both of those adjacent lots, and under the terms of the ordinance as written, they wouldn't be buildable as non-conforming. They'd still need the variances.
And the statute doesn't invalidate that part of the ordinance?
It does not.
Okay. I remember we had another case similar,
Yeah.
but I know it's complicated. Yeah, thanks.
Other questions from the board?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the beginning. Did you say there's a structure on the property now that's going to be taken down or already has been taken?
It's already taken down. The one you can see on the aerial was the existing house on 20 Reddington, not on 8 Gale, not the one that we're talking about now.
Okay.
But it was in pretty poor condition and has since been demolished.
And were its setbacks conforming?
The existing house?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have an existing conditions plan.
Okay. It's not a big deal. It looks like it's tight.
It does look tight, yeah. But
My
everything
point is that you may be developing a more conforming structure, right?
what we're developing now will certainly be conforming. I can't speak to whether the old house was conforming or not.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the board? Is there anything else you'd like us to know?
No.
Thank you. Is there anyone here who wishes to be heard in favor of this appeal? Is there anyone here who wishes to be heard in opposition? Any comments from code enforcement?
That was a non-conforming structure, I just
It
mentioned
was?
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rough measurements, but yeah, it looks like it was non-conforming with respect to both streets.
The one that was demolished?
The one that was demolished, correct.
I'm sorry, so are we doing both or just Gale right now?
We probably, to keep things clean, we should treat them
Okay.
as individual cases because they are, but they're effectively the same thing. With that, we'll declare the public testimony portion of the hearing closed. We have a request to build a house on an existing undersized lot that's been there for a long time, long before the zoning ordinance was passed. Mr. Wallner, how do you think? How do you take this?
I think in both cases, well, in this case, I think it's obviously reasonable use, and denying reasonable use would be a hardship.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with what's being asked here. It's, I'll leave it at that. I'm comfortable with it.
Okay. Ms. Spector-Morgan?
I have no problem with these variances. The lots predate zoning. They were involuntarily merged and then unmerged, but they predate zoning. But for the fact that they were in single ownership, if it was just one of these lots, we grant these variances every meeting. So there'll be no diminution of surrounding property values. It's not going to alter the essential character of the neighborhood, and there is no justice in denying the variances.
Mr. Winters?
Yeah, I think, the whole background with the involuntary merger and then the remerger and the common ownership, I don't think that gives them carte blanche to just, violate every, or many, but in this case, I think that they made every effort to minimize the number of variances needed, and I think it's reasonable.
I agree with my colleagues. We could grant one and not the other. That would really make some mischief.
See them again.
Move approval.
Yeah, okay, which one? 0151?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved to second. Any discussion? All in
You have
favor?
everything you need, Dr.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? 0152?
Move approval with the same arguments that Ms. Spector-Morgan presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? The vote is unanimous. The variance is granted. The next case was postponed, so that brings us to...
Oh, you got to do Redding. Did we do Reddington?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
We just voted on it.
All right, that's right.
We voted on it.
We just voted on it.
Did you open it?
Yep.
Yeah,
You saved your breath.
Those were together.
Yep.
we voted those together.
We're efficient sometimes, John.
You're legal. Okay, so that brings us to
The last case.
the next case, 0154, 211 Loudon Road, General Commercial District, Hodges Development Corporation owners. The applicant seeks a variance pursuant to Article 2824J, Table of Principal Uses, to permit use B5, adult daycare facility, in a district where it is prohibited. Gentlemen, you swear to tell the truth and nothing but.
I do.
Would you sign in on the form there, please, and identify yourselves for the record as you testify?
My name is Rajesh Chauhan. My name is Suraj Budathoki. I have come here with a written statement. I'll read that out and we'll have question and answer later if you have questions. I'm honored to stand before you today as the co-owner and CEO of Blumenstein Services, a trusted home healthcare agency serving the Concord community. With a mission to provide compassionate caregiver services, we have served over 60 individuals, focusing particularly on the residents of Concord and Manchester. As a transformative social change doctoral student, I have deep commitment to improving the well-being of our community members, especially our elderly population. Through our experience running Blumenstein Services, my business partner and I identified a critical need for an adult daycare center in Concord. There is no adult daycare center currently operating in this city or in our city. This center would offer a secure and engaging environment where seniors and young adults can participate in various activities and socialize, thus enhancing their psychological and mental well-being. I assure you that our proposed use of the building aligns seamlessly with the character of the neighborhood and poses no threat to public safety, health, or welfare. We have carefully designed the adult daycare center to operate within the existing structure without any alteration to its external or internal features. Additionally, we have received support from the property owner as evidenced by the submitted letters. In conclusion, the establishment of this adult daycare center represents a valuable addition to our community, addressing a pressing need for our elderly citizens. With your support, we can create a nurturing environment where our seniors can thrive and continue to enrich our community. So thank you for approving the needed variance to start these services at this location. Thank you for your attention.
I noticed that it says the property has previously been used for the same purpose. Was that use discontinued?
Discontinued long time ago.
Was it in the same physical location as you're proposing, or just on that same parcel?
Same property.
Okay.
And it was there for quite a long time.
Right.
Yeah, it looked like from the tracker records, it was different units.
A different unit,
Yeah.
okay. But the same type of use?
Same type of, as far as I know, it predates me.
And, sure. You bet. Swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And would you identify yourself for the record, please?
Scott Walker,
Mr. Walker, what would you like us to know?
Premier Properties, we represent the seller of this particular unit, and for 30-some odd years, Hodges Development that built this property and controls it, manages it, and the major condo owner. This is a condominium, commercial condominium. This unit here was occupied by TLC.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Adult daycare from 2003 until 2018. And then we actually sold that to someone before that. They're buying it from Lucas Holdings. Lucas Holdings bought it from TLC in December of 2018. They had the idea of a spa.
Of a what?
A spa.
Spa?
Spa.
Oh.
Spa.
Still a transplant.
People go to these, I guess.
Evidently not
They
interested.
did not build this, they did not proceed and build this out until January of 2020. And in March of 2020, COVID hit, and they basically didn't operate again. They lost all their help, and it was, no one wanted to go. And it is sat there for about 3 years. So TLC, this is a reestablishment of a previous business, the same type of business, adult daycare. They operate as Hodges Development said, inside the space, except for occasional walks. I assume this is going to be the same type of clientele. People drop off their elderly relatives. They may go for a walk. There's a gazebo in the middle of the courtyard.
There's a candy store.
People would always be out there on a nice day that sit there and get some fresh air. Yeah, I don't see this as a detriment to anyone, and probably to not approve this would be a hardship to the community of Concord. This, if you Google this right now, adult daycare in Concord, New Hampshire, you will get some people who will take on an individual at an hourly rate. But when Jean Fisk closed this in 2018, this woman was a saint. She found places in Manchester that would come and pick these people up you would come to the parking lot and pick up her clientele and drive them to Manchester so they would have a place to be during the day. It's an essential use for the city of Concord. And,
So when they were operating previously, was it just nobody noticed or complained about the big?
No, Hodges Development is the manager of the condo. They wrote a statement that said.
No, but what I mean is technically this use is not permitted in this zone, right?
I don't know how. Well, I did go to
did they get a variance before?
Bobby Tilton in your office. I asked her, and she was diligent about looking through the files to find out how this took place, and came up with nothing. I asked her to look again in the building permit section, and she didn't come up with anything either. So in 2003, and they came in 2004, and Mr. Chairman, did zoning change around that time? 2004? Wasn't that when we had CDAC or whatever we call that?
Yeah, well, there was a master plan.
I think Tracy knows the answer to this question.
The previous daycare did have a variance. It was just listed as two different units, and the applicant has applied for it this time.
Oh, they had a variance.
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's the answer.
I thought you said that in your notes somewhere.
It was listed as D and G.
Okay, maybe I missed that.
And that is because, you're right, there was a line right down the demising wall. It was 2 units.
U through
Right.
E.
And we combined the 2 units by taking down the demising wall, and now it's just unit F.
Well,
Excuse me, H. It's unit H.
E?
Applied for E.
I just had him check the permit.
Oh, sorry, it doesn't say it right here.
I think it says H on the permit.
Says E in the agenda.
It's in the online where you have, posted all of this, agenda. It's there, H.
I'm checking it now.
Yeah, I just looked at it like 5 minutes ago. Go get it. It's okay.
Somewhere in our,
We have all night. This is, the best thing you ever did was move it to 6 o'clock.
We know.
Every night meeting should start at 6.
Can you tell me why it can't be used in conformance with the permitted uses in the district?
Why it can?
Why it can't be used in conformance with the permitted uses in the district?
Oh, you mean the facility?
Mm-hmm.
I could tell you that the uses that are permitted, you could have a social club, you could have a dance hall, a concert hall, a sexually oriented business, but you can't have an adult daycare.
But that's not my question. Why can't you use it as it's permitted?
Why can't you?
Yeah, what's the hardship?
The hardship is that we're reestablishing a use that operated here in the neighborhood just fine for 15 years.
Okay, thank you.
Doctor, where would an adult daycare be allowed? I mean, I'm surprised that has a specific.
It's in more of the institutional type districts, like with the other educational and care type facilities.
But adult daycare isn't specifically a line item on the thing. It's interpreted as being like. Oh, it is.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Oh.
So it's in an institutional zone, like a healthcare.
Like a school or
Like Concord
healthcare. Yep,
Hospital,
those
okay.
types of districts.
I'd submit that it should be allowed in every district. It's totally benign to any neighbor. This particular, you don't have one.
What are you looking for?
What if it was listed as like a senior center type thing?
That would be,
Non-medical?
no, it would be a community center.
Oh,
Yeah, which is,
couldn't be
That's even less
specific,
districts.
okay.
so on that plot, which is like 2 acres of land and 4 buildings, it's the building on the front right.
Yeah.
What other uses are in those buildings? You said it's condos?
Service uses across the back, you know, a salon, Army recruiting.
And there's a candy and ice cream.
There's a candy store in the back.
Since it was
There's a CBD store and Edward Jones. And so we had to go to the board.
Yeah.
And I have a letter from
Oh,
the
the
board
condo
as
board.
well, from the condo. But also everybody had to sign a waiver right of first refusal.
Since it was previously used as an adult daycare, is there something about the layout of the design of the building that makes it very convenient for that use to be continued?
Well, it's going to be simple to get back to it. It's still pretty much the open space that it was before. I don't know if they call it barrier-free, but that's what was initially done when the daycare bought it, was they took that middle wall out so they could open up the space. It's all handicap accessible.
So you can monitor as many people at a time without any barriers.
Yeah.
Other questions from the board? Is there anything else you'd like us to know? No, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Is there anyone here who wishes to be heard either in favor or in opposition to this appeal? The record will show that no one stepped forward. Any comments from code enforcement?
No.
With that, we'll close the public testimony portion of the hearing. We have a request for a variance to permit an adult daycare center in a condominium unit in a zone where that particular use is not allowed. We heard testimony that a identical use was there for many years, apparently by virtue of a variance, and that there were no problems, that it was a suitable location. I'm going to start this one with Mr. Wallner.
You did that last time.
Well, you do a good job, you know. I
guess what persuades me to support this is that it had a long history of a similar use, albeit it was discontinued for 4 or 5 years. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. I'll let the others pipe in.
Yeah, I think there's some choices the applicant had, which is to go try to change the ordinance, or to come to zoning. I know there'll probably be some on the board that stresses the hardship issue, and what I'm trying to do is, in my consideration of this, is put less emphasis on the hardship burden that they have to demonstrate and look more at the reasonable use of the space. And the reason I'm comfortable putting the emphasis on that is, one, it's a reasonable use of the space. It kind of falls in the middle ground, in my view, of institutional versus what is almost like retail activity or service activity. But it works in this space, and so, and given the fact that, you know, for a long time, while not, there's a period of time in the middle it wasn't, but it was used for adult daycare previously, so I'm inclined to support the variance.
Ms. Spector-Morgan.
I appreciate all the arguments that were made, but I don't see the hardship.
This reminds me a little bit of a couple other cases we've heard recently, the charter school case, where there's really a very hard time finding something in the institutional district, and also the program for autistic youth, which was in this, I think, the same district. And here, if you have this condo and it's already been laid out for this purpose, they could probably repurpose it for something similar, maybe just a conventional daycare, but I think there's always going to be some cost to that, and if it's already proven to work in this slot, I think to me that does create a hardship to try to compel a change. So
I'm inclined to agree with Andrew. I certainly can see the logic for not finding a hardship, but in this case, I think all of the other criteria overwhelm my reservations about hardship. in terms of it being a reasonable use and meeting all the other criteria, not interfering with the zoning, not creating a nuisance or a hazard. And it does have the pedigree of having been there for quite a while. Plus, I probably was on the board that approved it before, and therefore it must have been a good idea. So I'm going to, I will support a motion to grant the variance, should such a motion be made. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I move to approve the variance, the use variance.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any, pardon?
I was giving Laura the
Laura a
opportunity
chance,
to
yeah.
To change my mind.
To do a star turn there, yeah. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed?
Nay.
The vote is 4-1. The variance is granted. Do I hear a motion to approve the rationale? And is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? And the minutes, did we have minutes?
Yeah, we did. So moved.
Is there a second?
Aye. Second minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
One was Nick Moore. The
Aye.
second one was
I abstain, I wasn't here.
I think the minutes got voted in. Okay. Any other business to come before us this evening?
Yeah, I don't want to go long, but I just did want to recognize there was an interesting letter from Susan Smith Myers.
Oh, yeah, I saw that in the paper. I think it's a
Yeah,
reprint of what
you
was
know,
in the
I
paper.
think I kind of agree with the tone, which is oftentimes they come to us with multiple variances, and they come back 6 or 8 times. You know, I'm going to hand a copy of this to my city council.
We have a copy of it that was given to
Yeah,
us tonight.
yeah, it was in the packet.
Yeah. And she did publish it as an op-ed in the paper, I think,
Yeah,
a
there's
couple,
some
3 weeks ago.
efficiencies and appropriateness to what she's suggesting. but
Absolutely.
That doesn't, we still have to deal with what comes to us.
Yep. And sometimes they know. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Okay.